Okay, everyone, it's 4 o'clock, so I will now officially open the meeting, and I want to welcome each one of you here this afternoon. I wish to advise all present that there is an audio recording being taken of this meeting, and as per Rule 8 of the meeting procedure, let me read out the following points. All persons attending the meeting are to be respectful of and considerate towards other persons attending the meeting. Language and conduct at the meeting that could be perceived as offensive, defamatory, or threatening to a person attending the meeting or listening to the recording is not acceptable. And for the purposes of the recording, elected members should wait for the chairperson to announce them before speaking. I request that all mobile phones or devices be either turned off or put on silent. And when you are speaking, could you please make sure that your microphone is on if you could speak to it. Thank you very much. Present at the meeting here is myself as a chair, Mike Dutta, the CEO. We have the Lord Mayor, Anna Reynolds, Councillor Bill Harvey, Councillor Kitsos, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Kelly, Alderman Marty Zuko, and Councillor Passant.
I'm here too, Chair.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. My apologies.
I'm
And
here too, Chair.
Deputy, and also Councillor Lohberger. There are no apologies. No leave of absence. No leave of absence. Thank you. Acknowledgement to country. I wish to acknowledge the fact that we are here to acknowledge the First Nations people who were the original custodians of this land upon which the city is built upon. I also want to recognize their care for the country over thousands of years. I also, on behalf of the council, note their spiritual connection, their cultural connection, and their enduring connection to this country, to this land. I also want to acknowledge the fact of the Australian history, the pain and suffering and the agony that the First Nations had to endure, and they have been through a lot, and they have maintained their culture, which is quite an outstanding achievement. I want to pay respect to their leaders, past and present. Confirmation of minutes. Someone like to move the minutes, please? Move, Councillor Harvey. All in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Consideration of supplementary items. There being none. Indications of conflict of interest, are there any? There being none. Number 5, transfer of agenda items. No. Item 6, reports of special committee. 6.1, City Economy Committee. May I ask Louise Bloomfield, being the chair, to move it?
Yes, I'm happy to move such as is, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, any questions, any comments?
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Just wondering about the issues around retail and commercial vacancies and whether the committee has looked into that. I know about a year ago we did collect some data about that. I'm just not sure if we're still doing that.
Through you, the Chair, there has been some data last year, I think, on retail vacancy that I saw today that came around for the survey. But this committee hasn't had an agenda item on retail or commercial vacancy since I can remember.
We had Dr. Louise Grimmer do a report,
That's right.
and she specified it was 5%, which was apparently appropriate.
And we have got any plans to do more?
That would be
At this stage, we haven't got any detailed plans to do a survey of our retail areas for commercial retail use, but it's something we can certainly look at in terms of collecting that data, be useful to guide some of the stuff we're doing around city activation, nighttime economy and investment attraction, for sure.
Any other comments? Any other questions? Any clarification? No, I put the motion. All in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We now move to 7.1 and I invite the Manager Economic Development, Director Community and Economic Development to introduce the item. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Elected members may recall this item was brought to the December meeting of Council, where it was referred back to the workshop for further discussion. So I'm going to ask Nick, the manager, about economic development area and parking to talk through the report before I get into questions.
Thanks, Ben, and good evening, elected members. As Ben just touched on, we spoke about this in December at the council meeting, and it was requested to come back to a future workshop for discussion, which is why we brought it back for tonight. Just a couple of sort of contextual pieces of information, some background information. So as you all know, Argyle Street is the largest off-street council-owned car park in the city. It currently has 1,155 parking spaces, with another 33 accessible car parking spaces included in that. It currently operates from 6:30 a.m. till 10 p.m. each day, which is after an increase in the operating hours from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. each day. From an occupancy point of view, its busiest times of the day currently are around that sort of 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. time frame, where it gets up to around about 90 to 95% capacity. Late at night and first thing in the morning under the current kind of structure are the quietest times of the day, where it's generally around just under 5% capacity or even lower than that. So as we know, and we've spoken about this, I think Ben's spoken about it in some of his previous presentations, but we can influence and we can attempt to influence occupancy levels through things like dynamic pricing to drive up demand at the right times of the day and in the right sorts of locations. The challenge that we have with that at the moment is that we just don't have the technology in our car parks to do that. It's still very much quite a manual process in terms of the ticket and the need to use ticketing machines and things like that. So once we've been through the future state of parking process, we'll be in a much better position to be able to implement those sorts of dynamic pricing type processes to ultimately hopefully get us to the sort of process or to the position where we're more regularly at that target rate of between 80 to 85%. These occupancy data slides, you've seen these before, so it's between the orange and the red, it shows anywhere between, the orange is anywhere over 80% and the red is anywhere over 85%, heading up towards 100%. So this is from a period in June last year. And this one's from December last year, so same sort of thing where we're experiencing a number of days where it gets up into the high 90s and then a number of days also where it's in the mid to high 80s. So Argyle Street does deal with some occupancy challenges. And this slide just touches a little bit on the budget or the current financial position. So the operating expenses for Argyle Street Car Park are at around $740,000 at the moment. Most of those sorts of major expenses include things like we pay, I think it's around $100,000 in land tax. We pay a similar amount towards body corporate fees. Labour is part of those operating expenses, things like that. And then revenue is currently sitting at around about 4.2 million. So it's currently about $3.5 million operating profit and that's projected to go up to 3.7 million by the end of the year. So we're currently on track to achieve the sort of revenue targets linked to the operating expense targets. So to consider a 24-hour opening hours for Argyle Street Car Park, we're looking at incurring labour costs of an additional $172,000, which I think is outlined in the report. That's for an additional couple of officers to be able to work through the evening and to be able to manage that through the rostering sort of system that we have. And additional security fees for both the officers and also for the asset itself of around about $200,000. So as it mentions there, this is a really basic financial analysis that was done utilising our existing cost structures. It hasn't done any analysis of potential future fees and charges and how we might change the fees and charges to offset some of those things. And I think the advice that we're providing or recommending is that we need to go through this future state of parking process to improve our technology capability so that we can then explore those sorts of things, so that we are in a better position to explore 24-hour car parking across this one and any of our other car parks, which is effectively what the recommended way forward is. So due to the cost at the moment, it's not considered financially viable by us to extend it to a 24-hour operating environment. Once we go through the future state of parking process, we'll be in a better position from a technology point of view, where we'll have less staffing costs, probably less security costs, and in a better position to deliver a more sort of customer-friendly service to be able to implement those sorts of changes, and it becomes more financially viable in that situation as well, I guess is our recommendation. And back to you, Chair, for any questions.
Thank you.
Or comments.
Right, so we'll begin with any questions and queries first, and then we will have discussion and debate later. Alderman Bloomfield.
Okay, first question, do we have a rate of return on that, given the value of the car park? I think we got a value for it recently. I was just curious, do we have a rate of return?
I think there's an asset value, as in what the asset is worth, but I haven't seen a rate of return figure for it.
Okay, I just think that might be something that's probably fairly relevant for us. The second thing was, I still note with concern, I mean, I mentioned this last time, anything that's over 85% capacity is a car that is overfull and overutilised because it becomes less effective, and suddenly we now have emissions issues. So it's not a green solution. I guess the question I have there is there a finite number of what that undersupply actually is? Do you know what I mean? The difference between 85% full and the 90 to 100% full. How many cars is that we have too many in there at a time? Because ultimately this car park should be operating, say, between 60 to 85% and not really deviate between those two values. That would be the perfect use for this car park, but we're up to 85 to 100, which means it takes longer to get in and out than it does
So,
to actually utilise.
Alderman, just pose the question and then you can comment later.
I'm trying to justify what I'm asking, that was all. And the other question I had was, are we examining the potential value for the Royal Hobart Hospital? Because the number of staff who work overnight, the number of patients who might find themselves overnight, or support people and so forth and so on, there'd be a huge potential capacity there if we were to just communicate with them, talk with them and so forth. Have we explored any of that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So there have been those sorts of conversations in the past. We haven't had a conversation with them again recently, but anecdotally we believe a number of the cars that are staying in there in the last hour and that are also there in the first hour are those cars that are working shift work at the hospital. So they leave it there overnight and then they come back and get it.
That was
First
29,
thing in the morning.
wasn't it?
Beg your
That
pardon?
was 29.
The number?
In the report, I think.
Yeah, it's somewhere in that sort of
Mm.
high 20s, early 30s most of those days. The risk with that is that if they need to leave and they want to come back and get their car, the car's closed, so they can't. The car park's closed, so they can't access their vehicle. So from that respect, it would be better if it was open 24 hours a day. I think it's also interesting when we just kind of look at it from a competitive perspective. So I think historically Sultans have played in that sort of space, probably more so than we have. And if our focus has always largely been around short-term casual users, their focus has always been more around long-term, long-stay users. So if we move more into that space, then we are obviously competing more directly with Sultans. And they've always been a really sort of good working ally up until this point. But if we start to play in their space, then it becomes a more competitive sort of situation. And then I think some of the competitive neutrality things that I know Ben has spoken about in the past becomes important to consider when it comes to setting fees and charges. Because at the moment, they're much cheaper when it comes to long stay, and we're much cheaper when it comes to short stay.
Thank you.
The Lord Mayor.
Thank you. A couple of questions. I think when we deferred this, one of the things I might have made in a comment was around, I hope that when we defer this we could gather a bit of data around whether the private car parks require security and extra staff, how we compare with them, whether other councils with big parking assets like Perth employ people overnight and security, and just to benchmark ourselves, and also whether we did any work in terms of an RHH staff survey or engaged with them. So I'm just wondering, has any of that information been...
We haven't done a survey, Lord Mayor, since December with Royal Hobart Hospital, but as I say, we've had previous engagement with them, which supports the idea that they would utilise it more. We haven't compared ourselves against City of Perth or other capital cities, but we do know with the other long stay car parks that They don't have those same sorts of costs because they've basically gone to a completely ticketless environment. So they used to have security. That was one of the things that they said to us when we spoke to them about it previously, was that it wasn't financially viable for them to stay open 24 hours a day, even though that they do as part of the broader picture because of those costs. But because they've now gone completely ticketless, they don't have those same costs.
So but do we have an idea about, because I get emails from RHH staff all the time about wanting more car parking, but do we have any sense of the market, the demand that we're servicing?
At the moment, I think it's basically, I haven't seen those sorts of emails. We've never really received those sorts of requests for additional car parking for 24 hours. And as I say, all we've really got is the anecdotal evidence that we have that suggests that they are using it currently, and they park there before it closes at 10 p.m. and then come and collect it first thing the next morning after the car park opens again.
Okay. And why are we paying who are we paying $100,000 in body corporate fees to?
There's a body corporate arrangement there between us and Sultans for the Wellington Centre body corporate. So we own the car park, they own the shopping centre, but the car park also services the shopping centre, and that's just part of the arrangement that we've had there for as long as I'm aware.
So what do we get out of that?
I guess sort of shared ownership of that facility. It's nothing more than essentially that body, and they manage a lot of the asset maintenance requirements for us. That a lot of those sorts of minor asset maintenance requirements are funded through those body corporate fees.
Yeah, of the Argyle Street car park.
Yeah, correct.
Or,
Yeah,
the
or of the
next
shared
one,
sort of assets.
the Wellington.
Part of that Wellington Centre body corporate.
And yeah, are we sort of the lower floors? They're all. What's happening with the lower floors these days? Like the first 5 floors of they're not sort of long-term car parking spaces?
No, we've only sold some long-term car parking spaces in Centrepoint in recent times. So they're part of that kind of casual short stay.
So it's
market.
all the same, whether you first floor,
Yeah.
6th floor, yeah.
Correct.
And are we offering any incentives for like 3 people in a car type of get a cheaper deal, or
We haven't offered any of those sorts of things recently. I know we've spoken about sort of retail-based incentives once we go through the process of installing new technology, but we don't have the technology to be able to do those sorts of things currently. But no, we haven't had those sorts of conversations either.
And final question, sorry, how long is it going to be before we can come up to speed? Because it seems like we're getting a lot of money in. You know, what would stop us from automating it in the next budget?
We've commenced a procurement process, which the current contract ends in October. So we've commenced a procurement process to engage consultants potentially around, contractors potentially around 5 new contracts around off-street, on-street, enforcement and wayfinding, amongst a range of other things. So we will have been through that procurement process by around about June, I think, this year we're targeting. And then it will just be however long it takes us to finalise that contract process, and a lot of that will have to come back via council as well.
Was it the final question, or is it a follow-up?
Sorry, there is a tiny little one extra. So you said the current contract runs till October, but have we got a contract for doing something in the Argyle Street car park?
Only for the technology and the systems that we have there, not for any new infrastructure that's to be installed there.
Sure.
Done. Deputy.
Yeah, thank you. In that last slide, you had that there was no evidence that there was an increase in demand. What's that based on? Is that like a comparison between the years prior to this 2025 data, or?
I think through you, Chair, we just haven't received any evidence, whether that's sort of information, emails or whatever it might be, to support the fact that there is an increase in demand for us to open for 24 hours.
Right, so it's not based on numbers or people actually going in and out?
No, well, the numbers that we have at the moment shows that there is 29, 30 cars in there in the last hour, and then there's the same number
That
in the first hour.
whatever it was. That you
Correct.
Yeah, okay. All right, and it hasn't increased
It's
at all?
It's increased from when councillors extended the operating hours previously, but only a small amount at this stage.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Councillor Kistos.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got quite a few questions here. I mean, my first is when we defer an item from council to workshop, is it just coming to us as is in the council chamber, or are comments that are made by elected members incorporated in what comes back to us?
Through you, Chair, I'd like to think that where we've captured those comments, that we would bring it back to you with an updated presentation or an updated report.
Okay.
And had thought that we'd done that, but clearly not based on the Lord Mayor's questions.
Well, I guess some of the things that I asked about in the chamber as well was just around more hard data of the figures about what costs it would, what the effect in our budget would be if we extended, say, for an hour either side, or to midnight, or opened at 5 or 5:30. I will stick it to questions now and put my contribution later in the piece, but I'm just wondering whether we have a realistic estimation of the number of users that may use it if it was open for 24 hours, because I feel like that's quite different to saying, well, there's 29 in there in the last hour, so we're assuming they will be the people who stay there, but I feel like there's a whole different user group that would come and use it if it was 24 hours. Have we?
We don't have any hard data on that, Councillor, and I'm not sure, short of doing a survey of the hospital or doing a trial, how we would gather any specific data to achieve that.
Okay, and what about during peak periods such as Dark Mofo, where there's 24-hour events through the city?
Yep, we obviously have data on the number of people that are in the city during those periods, and we have the capacity to open the car parks for longer to cater for those events currently. So we have the CEO has the delegation for us to be able to do that currently.
Okay, great. And I guess I can hear that, and in the report it obviously says that we're looking at some technological changes in the next 12 to 24 months that should make 24 hours easier for us. I guess my question is around that is, are we actually aiming to be able to provide a 24-hour service, and are we doing the technology upgrades to make sure that that is what we are delivering, rather than doing the technology and then chasing our tail and sort of saying like, oh, could we do 24 hours now, rather than saying the direction of the council is that we would like to make our service 24 hours?
We will prepare the procurement documents to allow us, or to allow council to be able to make a decision to be able to achieve that. So it won't be retrofitted afterwards, but the technology will provide us with the capability to do that.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure I understand right. So the 29 odd people that are staying overnight, they're paying $32 to stay there.
So just I probably need to correct something. It's in the report on that. So they might, if they turn up at 9 p.m, they'll get the 9 till 10 p.m. free. They pay a $7 overnight fee, and then they pay the fee then the next morning based on. So we don't continue to roll over the fees overnight. It's just, and I think I wrote that incorrectly in the report. So if they turn up at 7 a.m. the next morning, they're there all day, they'll pay $25 for the full day and incur a $7 fee overnight, plus then and then that's kind of where it's capped. But if they turn up, if they park at 9:45 and they're there for 15 minutes until it closes, they're there overnight, that first hour is free, they pay the $7 overnight fee, and then depending on when they come back to pick it up in the morning is when the time starts again, if that makes sense.
So realistically, how much would most of those people be paying, like $10 or something?
Correct. Or potentially just $7 if they drop it off in the last hour and they pick it up the next morning, yeah. But that's based on our current fees and charges.
And how much does Marketplace cost for the equivalent time?
I do have those figures here. So theirs is, they have an overnight fee of, so theirs is up to, their all-day fee is $16. I haven't got the fee in front of me that they actually charge for overnight, I'm sorry.
So that might be $16 for up to 24 hours?
Correct.
And what's their overnight occupancy like? Do we know that?
I haven't got their occupancy data, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. And when you mentioned before how when new technology comes in, some of those costs might be able to go down, like staffing and security. So would it be the case that the default will turn out that once we have ticklers, like number plate recognition or whatever it is, that we don't have to have any staff on, that security would just let them out? Is that the intention? If there was an equipment malfunction or something?
I think from a customer service perspective, we always need to have someone that's on call to be able to deal with those sorts of inquiries, whether it's through the night or during the day, but we'd be able to offer far more broader coverage across all the car parks, and it's other services that are included in the parking services side of things. So that's just would be the requirement under our enterprise bargaining agreement to have that number of staff there overnight. And the security costs are partially for their security and then also partially for security of the asset. So I think we would still need to have security, still need to be paying security to maintain the asset for us.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, just on the security one, does Marketplace, for instance, have security people on overnight, do you know?
I'm not sure, Councillor Kelly, with any confidence, but I believe they do have security on overnight.
Question number 2, have we had conversations or have we been approached by outside organisations to, for instance, lease for an extended period of time a whole car park, i.e. Argyle Street car park?
Through you, Chair, not through me, no.
Okay. Through you, Chair, to the CEO, could I ask that question? Are you aware of that, CEO? Would that be an option for us to consider?
Well, we haven't been approached in my time.
No, okay, that's fine. And thirdly, the cost of the software to do this number plate recognition that the other places use and all that smart technology, do you have a cost for that? Or?
Through you, Chair, I don't know what they've paid at the other car parks to be able to install that new technology, and that's, I guess, all subject to a future procurement process.
But we have no sense of what
Well,
that...
we are looking at leasing, though, as
Yeah.
our preferred approach, which takes away that need to have the capital, which is a far better way because it actually allows us to continue to have upgraded infrastructure and IT around parking than owning it when things become outdated within short periods of having bought them. So.
Yeah, my question was probably more focused on have we looked at the cost analysis of leasing or the purchase?
We're doing an analysis right now of what it's exactly costing us currently versus what we project it might cost, depending on what the operational model is that we go with, but we're expecting to have those figures by the end of this month.
All right, those are my questions. Thanks for your responses.
Thank you. Councillor Passant.
Forgive me if you get a phone call halfway through this, but some of the assumptions you've used I'm not super convinced on. Does it follow that the operating expenses of providing security and personnel would be offset if we saw a significant uptick in use overnight because the car park was opened?
Correct. And in terms of assumptions, I think we've really just used whatever was based on our existing fees and charges. But correct, if we see an increase in business, then that will help to offset some of those costs. But when the technology's implemented, we're hoping that those costs go down. So then, additionally, to your point, the revenue should go up.
Yeah. But even in that context, if, say, we get 100 cars a night because we've lowered our fees and we've made it accessible, lots of people who go to hospital are also looking for parking that are not staff, that are people that are bringing relatives in, that are visiting relatives, that have someone sick in the emergency department. And so the assumptions here are that it's going to cost money. Those people are not going to use a car park that might close. They might get in at 7 p.m, but if they know it closes at 10 and they don't know if they'll be out because it's a hospital, they're not going to use our car park. So like I feel like there's an enormous market here opposite two, not one hospital, we've got to remember that Hobart Private's there as well, 2 hospitals that all both provide 24-hour services, including late night arrivals for maternity patients coming to Hobart Private that have nowhere to park either. My wife's in labour, where do I go? Well, there's a great car park across the road.
I think you're now making points. If I could just ask you,
Sure.
ask the question and we'll come back to that.
Sure, so
Discussion and debate.
how can we have kind of any faith in the assumptions that we've got given for a decision today that this is not financially feasible if we haven't assessed the market properly?
Well, I'm not sure how at the moment, as I said earlier, I have not received any correspondence to suggest that there is this unmet demand out there, and perhaps the demand is being met by Sultans through the services that they provide. And I think there's not a decision, this is for workshopping, it's for discussion, it's not for a decision to be made today.
Ora Mizuko.
What was the purpose of this coming forward? That's my first question. And have we had a vast number of requests for a 24-hour service at the hospital? And if so, can you provide that information?
Through you, Chair, I think the purpose for bringing it here was there was a council resolution to bring it to a workshop. And to your second question, not across my desk, I haven't seen any request to open it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, thank you so much for cooperating and asking those questions. That's very good. Now we will open for debate and discussion. Anyone would like to now express their opinions so that the staff can take it over. Councillor Prasad.
Yeah, thanks. I think the only way to get an idea of the market here is to engage a behavioural economist or someone of similar qualifications. You're not going to get, there's no way to objectively understand the market other than using an expert to get the assumptions of what changes are going to result in what. And I believe that there are people out there that have the expertise to do that, to give us a better guide on whether or not it's a service that is wanted, is needed, and that will be financially viable. My interactions with the community through health are consistent with what the Lord Mayor has been saying, which is that there is consistent questions about where do I park when I go to the hospital, and consistent demand from the Hutchins staff for safe and better parking, who predominantly park either on Letitia Street or in the Domain. There are two places that they park. And that includes afternoon shift staff who can't park in our car park because it closes before the end of their shift. So, I mean, I think there's demand. I think that we need to go away and do more work before we make a decision. And finally, I'd say to Councillor Kitsos's remarks that having the affirmative action step of council saying, we want this to be 24 hours, go and do the upgrade, and then make 24 hours is the direction that it should go, rather than do the upgrade and then see what happens when we revisit this conversation.
I think, Henry, we can engage a behavioural economist to do that sort of work. Equally, we could undertake a trial and see how it works in practicality. We have the CEO as the delegation to achieve that.
So it's possible to accommodate that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Trials, got to be careful. It does take a while to establish a market. And if people don't really know about it in typical Hobart style, it does take a while to get traction and all that. So a trial for short to medium term could be very, very self-defeating, I believe. And look, we're in the business here. We've got hot competition with Sultan and Co doing this, and we're sort of in the big league here. And I believe we've really got to step up, you know, and you know, it's excellent return, I believe, in what we're getting there. And we've just got to, I think we need more hardcore data there. We've got to be a bit bold with the software and the investment in the technology, I believe, if we're going to go down this track. And I agree with what Councillor Pussett was saying. Look, the location we're in there now, if they can do it down Marketplace, where we are, we're in a much better situation. And if we're in the business of running a car park like this, such a major asset with all those 1,000 or so car parks, we've just got to be a bit bold, either sort of step up and act like a private enterprise business, because that's what we are essentially. The customers don't care whether we're the Sultan Group running it or the council. I just think, look, we've got to really strike this hard. And it's going to take a bit of investment. We've got to take a bit of a risk on that software and all that. I would like a study done on it, on whether it could be that an organisation would want to lease this asset off us. Now, I know that might sound a bit scary, but the return at the end of the day may be greater than what we're getting by going to all this work and all that sort of stuff. As opposed to what a fixed term lease on this could be. There's huge savings for other organisations that have already got that software, the know-how and all that. I know, for instance, that Marketplace car park, they virtually have anyone in there. It's run by one or two people. A lot of it comes back to mission control, and it's done by video camera surveillance and all to a very, very good standard, without incident, as I understand it. And we've just got to know that stuff, you know. We've got to know all the data. The biggest part of a founded business is knowing exactly what your opposition's doing. And that sense that sets the benchmark to us. But it'd be an interesting back of the envelope study to do. And I know you might say, well, how are we going to find out how much we're going to get on leasing it out? Well, there are ways of doing that. I don't want to drill down too much on doing that now, but it could be that we could be in a better financial situation than doing it all ourselves and invest that money for the city and the employment of people running it in other areas as well. It's not as if we're going to lose staff. We find it hard to get staff to do these jobs. It could be a huge win-win situation here because, wow, what an asset we have, And I just cannot believe we're sitting there opposite these hospitals, empty, you know, for extended periods of time. It just does not add up to me, you know. So, but thanks for your presentation. They're my thoughts on the matter.
Thank you. Alderman Suko.
Yeah, look, I've got a completely different viewpoint, Martin. Before I continue, where's the closest 24-hour car park to the hospital?
I'd suggest it's probably Marketplace or the other one on Argyle Street, just up the road from our car park.
So we've got, I know the car parks, so we've got one just up the road, which is probably what,
The
30 metres?
Yep.
30 metres.
100 metres, yeah.
And that's available 24/7 now. And we've got Marketplace, which is 30 metres on the other side of the Hobart Private. Look, you know, really, we want to go into competition with a major car park. Doesn't matter who they are or what they are. And we got 24-hour car parking available now within 30 metres of the hospital. Look, you know, this is not a McDonald's that, you know, you're going to have the amount of people that want to use this. But predominantly, the people that are going to use this car park are people that are going to be going to working or going to the hospital. Now, have we done a price comparison in between the 24-hour use payment at the competitors? Do we know what that is?
Through you, Chair. So we have done, I've done an analysis which is not in the report, but as I touched on earlier, so we're far more affordable for short term, because that's tended to be our focus, short term casual parkers. Sultans, for example, are far more affordable for long term, because that's their...
Okay, so for persons working at the hospital, right, they would be predominantly want long-term car parking, so they're going to continually park where they're going to get it cheaper in the long term. So we're only talking about now that the only benefit we're going to potentially have is people parking in the short term because it's cheaper. But there's availability is there availability in the two car parks 30 metres from the hospital for short-term car parking? I know there is, but I'm asking the question.
There is, and I mean, the fees and charges are always subject to change. Obviously, yourself.
Yeah, I understand. Look, I'm sorry, I can't support this. This is just going down a rabbit warren.
Thank you. Alderman Bloomfield.
Look, just listening to the debate and the questions so forth, I very much agree with a number of the members tonight with the suggestion that it would be, you've got to go to emergency, you don't know how long you'll be, you're going to have to choose a car park. So I know with my children and so forth, we've always gone to the Marketplace one because that's what you do. And we didn't question the price because you don't question the price, you just get to hospital. And as a result of that, you know, the next question would be, well, are they at capacity? And I can't remember a time ever where I couldn't get a car park there, which means that the issue that we have, for instance, during the day, where we're at full capacity, does not exist at night with the other two car parks at night time. So basically, the number of people who need this service are already being fully subscribed with the other two parks or outside, one of the two choices effectively. And all we're going to do by opening up the 24-hour, we won't be increasing the finite number of people needing this. We'll simply be sharing it across an extra car park, which means that we will literally, as you were worried about, be sharing with Sultans and taking away from the competitors their bread and butter. So they'll become, you know, they'll be a bit more competitive, working at how they're going to take clients off us, so to speak, during the day and so on. So I don't think mathematically it's actually really, unfortunately, working out in a way that suggests that we should be doing this. We need to actually see unrequited parking need, and we don't have that. What we have is the parking is being met with what we already have with other people. We're just simply going to be adding annex if we do this. So say it's probably not at this stage justified. Perhaps when the demand changes and possibly if the stadia comes through, we have additional types of need, that would probably change this mix. But mathematically, I actually don't see at this point we should go this way any further. I think we're pretty much reached its conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Can you just remind me, so when I know a staff survey at the hospital hasn't been done recently, but what did the last data show?
The last data showed that from a staff point of view that there was interest in being able to access the car park because the shift sort of started at a time when our car park was just about to close and then reopens again the next morning when their shifts are finishing. So the survey from the previous study looked at that there was some demand from the staff, but it was more about extending our operating hours, which is in line with the decision that you've already made. It wasn't so much about 24 hours.
So it was a different question, really, okay. So the question was about extending hours, okay. So absolutely core questions for me are how much the competitors are for overnight. We absolutely need to know that for sure. And if we can get an idea of their capacity at midnight, how many cars are in there at midnight or whatever. And I'm sure it won't be a capacity, it won't be at 95% or whatever else. But where I'm sitting with this is that I think this is a service we should offer. I think that the Argyle Street car park should be open 24 hours, given its immediate proximity to the hospital. I know that there's others close by, but I morally think it's a service we should offer. In terms of the costs, so even if it did say cost 400 grand in staff, and if people paid $10 a night, which we're thinking they might currently be doing, to offset that 400k extra cost, we'd only need to average like 110 vehicles per night, like each calendar night, to offset that expense. And I would imagine that with the assurance that you could access your car if you needed to, and with the increased traffic from the people coming in, you know, visitors and patients and whatever else, that we would be able to achieve that average, so break even on that cost. And then with people who are paying $16, which we might be what marketplaces charging, then we'd only need to average 68 cars per night to break even on that additional expenditure. So my instinct is that it should be open 24 hours and that's a service we should offer to the community, and that we should price match whatever our competitors are doing. But it's really based on the fundamental questions around the around what was I going to say? Oh yeah, the prices that marketplace charge. But also, I don't want to see like behavioural economists contracted in and spending tens of thousands of this, because the hospitals are very cooperative people. They could easily put out a survey asking the 24-hour question. If we were to open Argyle Street 24 hour, would you use it? Survey Monkey, yes or no? And how much would you be prepared to pay? 5, 10, 15, 20? We don't have to get an economist for that. We just need... the biggest gap in here for me is data, is tangible information. But I want to see that tangible information, because I don't think this is dead in the road at all.
Thank you. Now, anyone else, Lord Mayor?
Thank you. Yes, I also would like to get some better information for us to make a decision on this. I think we should have a sort of in-depth engagement with the RHH, Hospital Management. They're one of our biggest employers. We should be talking to them quite regularly. And really they need to be taking workplace travel planning seriously. So they, I hope, would have a sense of how many staff, you know, are coming into the city for each shift, whether it's overnight or daytime, where those staff are currently parking. I mean, I don't think we need to actually have grumpy constituents emailing us for us to act on, you know, how we provide, you know, a good service for major employers, or help them provide a service. I mean, Glebe, the Glebe resident, if you talk to another part of council, you'll hear that Glebe and the streets of Glebe is a huge issue and has been for years, with people parking out the streets of Glebe to you know, stay overnight. So that is information in this organisation somewhere. I don't know who. It's probably the traffic, the transport team. So yeah, I really think we need to know, you know, what is RHH and Hobart Private, how many patients and how many staff are in those buildings on an average night. And we also need to know, yeah, what Marketplace and what Vodafone building occupancies are, overnight, what the fee they're charging is, and also what's on offer, because I just looked and saw that the Argyle Street one seems to only be offering monthly parking, so therefore it's a different product, and Argyle Street would be useful for the people that literally, you know, having a baby, you know, having people wanting to go there for a short time and need somewhere to go for hospital, in terms of visitors or others. So yeah, I think we need to have a next level of information brought to us about before we make any decision on this, and I would like us to consider if we can develop a connection with the RHH and the Royal Hobart Hospital, and maybe even the unions and the health services union, so that we could, you know, potentially have a trial, you know, sometime maybe in winter. That's when I do get a lot of questions around people feeling uncomfortable going back to cars in the Glebe and on the Domain when it's dark. So, you know, maybe we could trial it over winter for a month. Again, we'd have to be very confident that we had the buy-in of the major employers around there that are operating 24 hours to know that they will promote this service being available, and just seeing what we get. But I still think it's, I think we should act on it. We have actually been talking about it for quite a few years, but yeah, I think we should sort of still keep working towards acting on it, and maybe a trial could give us some better information, plus some more conversations with both the competitors or the partners, the car parking partners, and the hospitals.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to make any contribution, additional contribution, any new points? No? Thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Manager and the Director. Thank you. Right, we'll do the same with 7.2 now. Hobart Bike Plan. I'll invite the Senior Transport Planner Manager and the Director of Strategic and Regulatory Services to present. And then we'll follow the same process, the format. You know, we ask questions only, please, if you don't mind, and I think it's going very well. Thank you for the way you have conducted yourself. Greatly appreciated. And then we'll have a discussion and debate. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I think most of you have met Ali, who's going to do the presentation on the bike plan tonight. So take it away, Ali. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so over the next 10 minutes or so, what I'll do is give you a high-level overview of our draft Hobart Bike Plan 2026. The focus is on 5 key messages here this evening. First, how the plan consolidates the decades of planning that has been undertaken into one map, how it confirms the function of streets that are already supported by Council, how it intentionally avoids at this stage the discussion of form, and the 6-element framework for building the network for bicycling, as well as a target for daily bike trips and why we think that's achievable.
I'll be happy to do that.
I'll be happy to do this too. You can just envision what I'm talking about. There we go. Okay, you didn't miss anything. This is the first slide for this part now. So why a bike plan? This plan envisions a safe, connected, and comfortable cycling network for Hobart, something that our community has consistently asked for during engagement of our local area mobility plans, neighbourhood plans, transport projects, and the Hobart Transport Strategy Development. Our residents in the Hobart LGA already make 4,800 bike trips a day, and that's even with a network that has many gaps. So what this tells us is that there is demand for bicycling, and the role of the bike plan is to organize and connect the network and the work that's already been done so that we deliberately progress the bike network into one that feels like a real transport choice, one that you could see yourself riding along or somebody that you know choosing to ride and feeling comfortable there. This document is something that our Hobart Transport Strategy, when it was endorsed in 2024, committed us to developing. So we're here with it today. It's a citywide bike plan, bringing together all the previous planning work that's been done into a single document. And I'll explain how we've consolidated that now. Over the last 2 decades, Council has endorsed and or promoted several cycling-related plans. Earlier regional cycling networks, such as the Principal Bicycle Network as far back as 2008, to the most recent Greater Hobart Cycling Plan in 2021, 4 local area mobility plans, or LAMPs, 3 and counting school access travel plans, and neighborhood plans. So these documents are shaping good projects here in Hobart and our neighboring Greater Hobart councils, but they live in different places. So until now, there hasn't been a single cohesive map showing how the cycling network functions and how it harmonizes a network accessible across the whole city. This may reflect your experience. You may feel that you've seen cycling work appear in many different areas and documents over the years. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but with this bike plan, we're putting it all into one place. So back to that question of why a bike plan. For the first time, all cycling outcomes from this bike plan, these plans are combined into the one citywide network. And this enables a single source of truth for us officers, the community, and the councillors to look to. It's logical routes across the community, providing connectivity, and it's clarity for our investment, our renewals programs, and our grant applications. Okay. A second message tonight is that the bike plan confirms the function of each street or corridor in our identified bike network as primary, secondary, neighborhood, or recreational. It reinforces existing intent, and it brings our plan in line with the state's cycling infrastructure design guidelines. Last year, the Monarchy Council endorsed its cycling plan in line with this vocabulary, so we're falling in sync. This is an excerpt of the draft bike plan document. The plan was included in the agenda that you received in draft. The primary routes are, think of those as something that's connecting across town centers and between suburbs. These are like your highways, but for riding a bike, like the Intercity Cycleway, Argyle and Campbell. These streets have been identified for a long time in documents as principal cycling corridors, and they handle your longer cycling trips. Secondary routes connect people to destinations like your collector roads would do. You'd use these for an errand into the shop or to go to your barber, to drop your kid at the sports practice, and to connect to the principal corridors. Neighborhood routes are the local streets that connect people from their home to the short trips that you take to your local school, to get to your local retail precinct, and to access those larger capacity secondary and primary routes. So this is like Fitzroy Place and Lansdowne Crescent. These have come out of more of the local processes, local planning processes like LAMPs and school access travel plans, and last year's neighborhood greenways study. This plan isn't really shifting goal lines, goalposts. Here it's organizing what's already been documented. Now, another important message tonight, and also from the bike plan, is that the plan doesn't prescribe what forms the routes will take. It identifies how we need these bike corridors to function, not as to whether a corridor will have a protected bike lane, a painted lane, a shared path, or some other treatment yet. So those decisions are made later at a project design stage, supported by community engagement, informed by engineering work, and with reference to the Tasmanian government's cycling infrastructure design guide. The plan gives clarity then on what the routes need to achieve in order to get people cycling and feeling comfortable. And so when it comes time to progress a project, we can focus the project development discussions on determining what solution is appropriate to deliver that function and that accounts for the context of that corridor. The plan organizes the delivery of bicycling corridors through 6 elements. First, it's to build what's already planned, deliver on those projects that are in our LAMPs and school access travel plans and neighborhood plans. The second is to connect links by highlighting especially those tricky intersections where safety and continuity seem to break down. The third is to coordinate with our renewals colleagues at the city, adding improvements when assets are scheduled to be renewed that will lower costs and disruption. And it may lead to some disjointed links at first, but over time, the connectivity should line up. A fourth is to maintain quality, because a reliable network will have consistent line marking and surface condition and signage. A fifth is small but impactful treatments. So these are lower cost treatments such as wayfinding, adding trees and greening, and safer crossings, traffic calming along the neighborhood routes that will help people reach our higher order primary routes. And then finally, complementary initiatives. Important things like secure bike parking, having back on your bike classes, safer speeds in our community streets, supporting community events. There's a range of complementary initiatives that we can hold as at the city and also support our community partners in doing that increase the safety and uptake of cycling. So the target that this plan proposes is to have to meet 10,000 daily bike trips in Hobart by 2033. Given that in 2023 the baseline was 4,800 trips, the target represents a little bit over doubling in a 10-year time frame, and it's aligned with statewide objectives to double the amount of active travel over a decade. So why is this achievable? More than half of all the trips that we take in Greater Hobart are shorter than 5 kilometers. That's all the trips that we take. That means that we drive a lot of short trips because not all of us are bicycling those trips. However, under 5 kilometers is a very ideal cycling distance. It's about a 20-minute bike ride. We also know that people are interested in bicycling, but they do have concerns. About 40% of Tasmanians report that they'd like to ride more or take up cycling if they felt comfortable or more confident. Interestingly, our community has also invested in owning bicycles, with 1 in 2 adults in Hobart having access to a working bike. The number is even higher for children, which is great. And we've already seen what can happen when we've invested in a connected network. One of the most striking examples is the journey to work rate of South Hobart's residents. Cycling to work there increased 250% following the investment made in the Hobart Rivulet. So from around 2% cycle to work rate in 2001, and 2% is about the normal percentage in Hobart today, to 7% in 2021. So with a safe and connected network, we believe it's possible to unlock thousands of more daily trips by bike. I'll close this out on our vision. Our formal vision of the bike plan is the same one adopted in Hobart's community vision, the Pillar 5. So that's also reiterated in the Hobart Transport Strategy. We are a city where everyone has effective, safe, healthy, and environmentally friendly ways to move and connect with people, information, and goods, and to and through spaces and the natural environment. What I have on the screen today could be a proxy for that future. This young girl is Ruby, and she loves riding. She wrote last year to the council when the bumpy track was closed for maintenance. She said that she was concerned it wouldn't be able to be reopened very fast, and it was a link that she could ride to school, and she missed being able to use it with her friends. She says here that she understands that cycling is a healthy choice for herself and for her community. So for her, cycling is a fun choice. And that's what the future is that we're planning for, a network that supports people's choice to cycle, 10,000 trips a day and beyond, giving people more ways to move around Hobart. In closing, today we're seeking your feedback on the structure and clarity of the plan. And again, that draft was included in the meeting package. We're looking for confirmation that the key messages that you've heard here tonight align with your expectations, and your guidance will also help us finalize the plan for your consideration at the end of the month. Happy to open the floor.
Thank you, Ellie. Now, the manager and the director, do you have something to add or contribute?
All right.
Okay, we have passive listeners in here now. Fantastic. Okay, we'll start with questions again, all right? And then, after the questions and clarification, we'll enter into debate and discussion. So I'll begin with Councillor Kitsos.
Thank you, Chair. Really great work. Really love the way that this pulls everything that we've been working towards together. One thing that I feel like is missing in here, and I wanted to ask if this had been part of your conversations, is safety as a metric on those, the colour coding there, because obviously different routes, different safety concerns, but also same route, different times of day, different safety concerns. So particularly we want to see more women commuting and more cargo bikes with people dropping off to school in the active transport space. So I think safety is something that I would be looking for if I was picking up this document, to see which way would be the safest way to get my kids to school. Is that something that you...
As a proxy for safety, we wanted to raise uplift trips altogether, but we would be planning to hope that included the diversity of ridership. One thing that we'd be hoping to track just as a team is the cycling to school numbers, which can be done through a hands-up count on an annual day in the year. So while we haven't had a report on that necessarily, we do suggest that we would like to measure that and report on the success there. So
it's a fair question. So safety,
yeah.
Safety is at the core. Transport, one of our main policy objectives around transport is safety. So it is the purest sort of first thing we look to. You want to make all journeys safer. So not safe, as the journeys are mostly safe. So you want to make them safer. So I think the language, we could beef the language up, but I think you can see it's at the core of the functional sort of elements that the guidance and statements, design guides provides, is to make it safer. So we can beef that language up for sure.
Yeah, I think certainly putting something in there that you can find that says which one's the safe one to go on.
But see, we just got to be careful, because all routes are safe. It's just how do we make them safer? And so your primary, secondary, your final form can lead to high levels of comfort. So it's perceptions of safety. I guess it's very, very complex, and we're really careful not to say that's safe and that's not, because that's not reality. Most of what people do is safe. It's making it safer. So that being said, the language could become sort of stronger with some of that nuance.
Councillor Passot.
Yeah, thanks. Just noting the way you delineated recreational route out, it got me thinking, like, how are you going to manage routes that are both recreational and commuter routes, but also maybe routes that have quite different form and types of recreation? So I'm thinking of 3 examples here. A future Battery Point walkway will be both. The intercity cycleway is definitely both. And Sandy Bay Road is definitely both. So how do you manage, Sandy Bay Road is actually very high recreational use. So how do we, how are you going to manage that? Can you talk to that at all?
The idea of the function of the routes is that what we need that to perform as in order to achieve the cycling trips that we hope to see double. So where some of the trips, some of the routes maybe overlap in how people might use them, it could be a conversation, I think, when we get to the form later of potentially different options for people who want them for different styles at different times. You might use it with your child in one way on a shared path, while also hoping that the speed, if you're riding on the road, was safe enough to ride in a more recreational manner. But to use your Sandy Bay example, that's definitely needs to be a primary type of route so that we can achieve those long distance commuting style trips there. The recreational routes that we're dealing with in the bike plan too are, there's not so many of them in the map, although recreationally mountain biking and connection to the outdoor trails is huge. So these are really yours that are your routes that are in your urban green spaces, and so there are a few examples such along the new Newtown Rivulet Trail or around the foreshore there in the Cornelian Bay, where you really wouldn't take those routes as a trip to move somewhere else. Those are mostly how we're seeing recreational routes.
Can I clarify? Well, not clarify, but like, I guess the idea of classing a recreational route as a singular entity is a little bit vexed in that Sandy Bay Road recreation is like bunches doing 40 k's an hour, but equally a Bashwood walkway could be kids riding with their parents, or old people just going for a nice slow recreational ride, which is a wholly different picture to a bunch of 40 cyclists doing 50 k's an hour.
Yep.
So whether or not you want to consider classing recreation or subdividing recreation out,
where I see this is, if I may, so councillor, is you almost go to so you raise the three and you gave them three or two categories. You almost go to particular function, which is the highest order function. So if they're any of those, which all of those three that you identified are primary, we would identify how do we deliver a primary route network. Does that make sense? So for example, Battery Point Walkway, notwithstanding it's obviously where it's at in its planning stage, we would design it in such a way to deliver on the primary, and they have certain elements around the final form that you provide for it. Your Sandy Bay bikes or mammals energy, that's a different sort of piece again, because they're treated a little bit differently as the way they go about their ride, versus if you were to ride Sandy Bay with your kids, then you'd see that very much as a recreational. You'd look at the higher order, which is your primary route, and that final form would have to deliver on the primary route.
That's right. I think if I could just add one other thing.
Okay, just ask the question,
Yeah,
you can comment later. Question, please.
Whether would you consider the idea of even dividing those those uses on the same route? So Sandy Bay Road, you like to play mammals one section of the road, because they're not going to ride in the protected lane.
Correct.
The kids might want to.
Yeah, if I may, so there's two parts to that. One, we're trying to be consistent with other councils in the state, so we're trying not to have different language. It's really important when you go to grant applications and different funding models. The second is the way sort of a mammal-clad group would ride the road. You're looking more at how you treat it from a traffic perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
So we wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't want them, 2 metre wide, 1.5 metre wide bike lane. You want them on the road doing 40 k's. It's 40, the 85th percentile speed is 45 anyway. There's a level of comfort, and they choose that road accordingly because of that.
Yep.
So we're not actually building a bike facility for them, we're building a traffic lane for them.
Yep.
So I'm comfortable, primarily for that first reason, that we need to be aligned, but I don't think that there's a gap there that we need to fill.
Lord Mayor.
Did you want to add something?
I was just going to say, for the benefit of anybody who doesn't know the acronym
Oh,
MAML,
sorry.
middle-aged man in Lycra. That's what that is.
I guess I just wanted to understand whether for the bike plan you might do a section on sort of the cost benefit of different approaches and the deliverability of different approaches, because based on where we look as though we're heading with state government funding and active transport, the serious separated cycleway infrastructure and possibly the similar situation with federal government, is that something you're looking at in terms of if you want to get to your target, if you want to get some results by 2030, are you looking at the sort of the reality of the implementation of this as something that will, give us some guidance about what to do first and what to focus on first?
So you're talking about ordering, or you're talking about either or?
Ordering in a sense, in that, okay, well, because we know that, a greenway will cost us $10,000 per 100 metres, compared to a separated cycle will cost us $1 million per 100 metres.
Yeah.
We're going to deliver these first, and when we get a chance, when there looks like there might be some federal or state money, we'll go to the, like, just in terms of some sort of cost-benefit analysis of the deliverability of the different approaches.
Yeah, I think so. The good news is, and you might be able to add to this, Karen, is because we've got plans already. So we've got our lamps, we've got the work in Central Hobart plan sort of identifies most of the projects to deliver on this, and in the plan that you see, there's actually a lot already in the planning stage. So I think it's not, we can do both. You've spot on, like the funny elements for, say, on Augusta Road. So Augusta Road's our next big primary route we're looking to invest in, and we talked about that at the last council meeting and workshop. That's a significant investment, and we'd look to tap into other funding sources for that. But we can do that at the same time as invest, and we've identified through the plan those greenways, the locations, and they sort of link into some of the tree strategy pieces, they link into some of our signage, traffic management pieces, which we've got discrete funding sort of pieces for, but they also identify in some of our school access travel plans where we're partnering. We've got projects we're delivering right now and into next year. We'll talk about some of them tomorrow, where we're starting to deliver on some of those greenway sort of activations. So I'm optimistic that we can do both, and we are doing both. There's also that renewals, just to emphasise that renewals focus, we are trying to align it with the program on the asset management side of things as well.
I just think, maybe I'll make a comment.
Make the comments. Any other questions? Anyone else? No? Okay, so thank you. We'll wait, open it for debate and discussion and your contribution so they can take it away and add to that. Thank you. Alderman Bloomfield.
Reading through, I don't really think many people have a lot of issues with the plan itself. It's always been an issue with the implementation because, the desire to have a way of biking around the city, I think everyone would pretty much agree that they like that. But the problem we have is that when it sucks out resources that are greater than it contributes, then we have an issue because we keep on relying on design premises developed by the state growth, which is not you guys, it's another series of plans that treat the city, which is all about commerce, the same as a suburb, which is all about living. And they are two uniquely different systems. One has discretionary use and one has non-discretionary use, as you have to go home, you have to get up and you have to go to work and you have to go to school. Whereas in the city, you don't have to do anything in there. You can choose to avoid it completely. So it actually needs to have a different viewpoint and different assumptions. And I don't see the implementation, that's where our issues are, and that's where the debate really occurs. These plans are fine. It's the implementation that I keep on talking about that is causing our problems.
Any other, Lord Mayor?
I guess it's another take on that idea of implementation, but probably from a slightly different perspective, in that, I think, as you've mentioned, we've got a lot of plans and half plans and bits and pieces of, the lamps and this, that and the other, and I think there is plan fatigue, both amongst elected members and probably the community. So I'd be, I imagine if you went out with this plan for public consultation, one of the responses you'll get is, not another plan, that's just my perspective.
We've just to clarify that, we're not going for broad consultation. This is to deliver pretty quickly on what we've heard.
Okay, and what's
This
already-
picks up consultation
Yeah.
that we've done or other plans.
So yeah, so I would really, you know, I think it'll be a much stronger document for both the staff and the community and elected members if it does have that clear sort of deliverability, like that you actually test it. Is this deliverable by 2033, or when is it deliverable by how many greenways, for example, which I'm a fan of because I think lots of cities that don't have you know, like that don't have lots of active transport funding like big European cities, but lots of places in, you know, North America and others use greenways because it just makes the best use of your existing street infrastructure, but it just sends people in safer directions, safer, quieter streets. And I think even sort of cities that have spent a lot of money, like Sydney, they're calling them quiet streets. But I think, you know, if we could get a sense of, well, how many of those quiet streets, you know, whatever we're going to do to them, whether it's markings or signage or just promotion or other things, how many can we deliver in the first 3 years, how many in the next 3 years, and then that's why I was wondering about, like, if you could deliver 200 kilometres of greenways for the same cost of 2 kilometres of separated. Just think, again, I love the separated on the big busy streets, but I do think we have to make an assessment about, well, what is it that we prioritise given the budget, and maybe we just have a whole heap of things that are in planning, but we call out that these are only deliverable when we get a partner in terms of a state or federal government partner, and we really sort of make that quite clear. So I know you're sort of suggesting that maybe your plan won't be too directive, but I worry that it's in some ways it needs to be a bit clear about how this is actually going to be implemented for people to kind of buy into it, and for it to be a guide that lasts, that stands the test of time, and doesn't sort of someone saying in 5 years' time, oh, we need a new bike plan or whatever. So,
I mean, one issue we haven't spoken to tonight is the broader piece that we're doing in asset management. David and team are doing a lot of work in the strategic asset management plan and focusing on maintaining existing assets, and you know the extent to which we will be focusing on new and upgrades of assets. So it is part of a bigger piece. I understand you're trying to grab onto you know, some hooks to make sure it's delivered, but I guess this is one part of that bigger piece, and it will feed into, as Dan said, we are ticking along doing these in each capital works plan, and I think trying to predict in this plan the rollout, aside from all the other individual streams of work that we've got going, is going to be pretty difficult.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I'm happy with the work produced here versus all of those documents that I've looked at over the last 20 years. And I'm glad it's hopefully the volume of truth. You know, what do you call it? Single source of truth. Single source of truth. Who's the audience? Who do you want to read it?
This plan is probably most helpful in its paper form for us around the table and for our colleagues at the city who are working on figuring out the process of developing it. As somebody who's moved to the area maybe and wants to know the cyclability of the streets to get you into work where you will be working, what will be more helpful is probably an online version that shows with a bit more detail on the network the projects that are planned for that, if there's something planned. And this does show, not very clearly in this Zoom level, but what's existing. And so something that we'll be creating online is to show the network that people can filter through to see and kind of plan their trip a little bit better. But as a document, I would answer your question, Councillor Harvey.
Because I passionately hate landscape documents. Where you have to scroll across your screen to find out all the details.
And I do apologise.
Especially if you're looking at it on
I
your
broke
phone.
that
You
up.
better not have one either. Well, you got one?
This evening.
No. So I'd much prefer just
A single page by
single page. I know this is double page, I get it, but just for when you're trying to read stuff, and if everyone reads things on their phones, how critical is it to have a readable document when you're using your phone? You know, my phone doesn't do that anymore. Can't do that. But anyway, but if no one can read it, and remember 50% of people can't read anyway.
Which is the ports of colours and sort of never approach it that way.
22% are colourblind. No, that's yeah. Anyway, I just want it to be accessible.
Yeah.
Because I know there's so many documents we've produced, and I've just gone through them today, and I've got about 2 tons of them in my room that I've never read again. You know, I looked at them the first time we signed them off, and I've never opened them again.
Yeah. But the importance of this is, I mean, I know we joked about the colours, but it gives you that really quick and easy way of defining the different routes. So if you're saying, if we come to you and say, we're thinking we're doing a project on this street, you need to be able to go, what if we actually allocated that street from a functional perspective? And that will then help guide, you know, for us and the community, and then when we talk into the detail around the actual form. Because there's no point in us putting a separated cycleway on, say, Lansdowne Crescent or something.
Or having heaps of content
it doesn't
sitting across the map that you can't read.
Correct, yeah.
So anyway, as long as we can read it, I'll be happy.
No,
but I do appreciate the simplicity of what you're trying to do here. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Yeah, when I looked at page 10 and 11 at all the reports, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all that work and churn. And yeah, if I would have had my time again, I would have just prepared, like, this was the document we had. And I'm wondering then, if we've got all these suburbs mapped out, does that mean we don't really need to do the lamps anymore? Because planning the bike routes is a bulk of the lamps.
It's part of. It's obviously walking's a massive part, so walking's bigger than bicycling in the lamps, but yeah, get that point. It's also understanding safe speeds, it's connections to schools, so it's a part of it. Yeah, you're right. It's a, yeah.
But otherwise it feels like we've decided that this is the bike routes for your suburb. So now West Hobart went through a consultation.
So the bike plan brings into the West Hobart lamps outputs into the bike plan. So if you look at the specific neighbourhood routes and primary and secondary for West Hobart, you're right, that was derived from the lamp process. Yeah. So it was a great process.
But it just seems to be 2-tier treatment. So West Hobart's fed into this, whereas others will get told this is your bikes because we approved this.
Well, the good news is, and to answer your first question, we've pretty much gone through through either a neighbourhood plan, Central Hobart plan, or a LAMP, or a school access travel plan. We've gone through most of Hobart.
Okay, so like 5 different approaches to figuring out the bike networks for the city.
Depending on, so it's not just bike, but depending on what we're actually doing. So neighbourhood plan obviously looks at land use form and some other more detailed things. That's an appropriate mechanism to use in some cases. Whereas where something like West Hobart, the land use is pretty static, a LAMP's a more appropriate way of sort of deriving this information.
So my biggest concern and nervousness around this is kind of related to Alderman Bloomfield's, where you said you've intentionally not mentioned the forms, but the forms are really important. The forms is where it matters, because I doubt many people at all would express concerns with shared zones, lowering speeds for shared zones, sharing the road sort of education and beware of bike signage, but separated bike lines that cost millions of dollars, that cut the parking in half, that remove pickup zones, they're oil and water, they're poles apart. And I think it's a bit disingenuous because we've got in here, I think somewhere I saw that diagram where it's the safe to least safe.
It's up on the screen,
yeah, that diagram. Yeah. And then that diagram also appears in the West Hobart LAMP, but it's labelled up there. A version also appears where it has the most safe. The most safe is obviously protected bike lanes, and then it radiates down. So it's like we know what that legend equates to. We're just pretending we don't, to not upset everyone that doesn't yet know that at some point our plan is to put a separated bike lane in front of your street. Like you do know what's coming. And precedent will also show that the primary routes down Collins Street and along Argyle and Campbell are the intention is to, well, obviously Collins has the separated bike lanes, Argyle and Collins, there'll be plans over that time. So it's kind of like, it feels to me that there's, the form should be in this plan. We should be proposing the actual forms of this will be separated, this will be shared zones, this will be painted lines. And I think it's a missed opportunity to do that, and also a little bit, like I said, it feels disingenuous that we know what the plans is, but we're not fully disclosing it at this point. I also think, well, where's the costing for it? I mean, we know, for example, that Collins Street is expected to cost, the last I heard, around $4.2 million for how to make it permanent, the separated bike lanes, and that's however many hundreds of metres. So if we calculate out the primary zones, and if the intention is that they're going to be separated bike lanes, we can do the sums on how much this is going to cost. So I think it would be naive to approve, yes, we're going to do this plan without some costings of if primary equals separated or paint or buffered lanes, this is the likely cost of the plan. If it equals painted roads, this is likely cost. We should have it in there because this document will be relied on ideally for an enduring period of time, and it will be relied on to people say, oh, but we agreed that we were going to put this treatment to this street because look, it's in our plan here. So because of how the weight this document will carry, it should be costed, at least to a ballpark. And we should know what those costs are. We should know roughly how much a kilometre of painted road costs, or how much 100 metres of separated bike lanes cost. But I wouldn't be comfortable supporting this without the forms being identified and known, because I think that's reasonable work that should be done. And I think that should be done, and it should go to the community, because this document, in comparison to some of the others, I think it is more digestible, because it does only focus on really one thing, you know, compared to the lamps, all that sort of stuff. One thing I did have is, should we have a CBD plan in there? Like, I don't think there's one just for the CBD.
So we've got obviously the Hobart Central Plan. We've also got the Inner Hobart Network Operations Plan. They're our two guiding documents that give us priority, what roads, so.
I know the information exists, but in terms of it being a one source of truth, it should be in there.
Standalone page.
I know it's in there.
I'm with you, sorry, as a neighbourhood plan, yes.
As a region,
I'm with you,
an area.
Yep.
So that it is all in one document. I know you can see it off to the side of Glebe, you can see it off the side of West Hobart, but it should be there. Also, just in terms of the usability of the document itself, it'd be great if maybe you could choose different colours to pink and purple, because they're actually quite hard to distinguish on the screen. And also the table of contents seems quite weird because it's not really a table of contents, it's more like sentences that have been turned into a table of contents. Just a question for the CEO, please, just rather related. When will we be having the workshop on Collins Street bike lane issues that came from council?
I would have to look at the workshop plan, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, all right. Oh yeah, and just one other question. What's the current, just because it's on the map here and it's been fed into this document, has the council formally approved that we're proposing to go in, that we're proposing a battery point walkway? Is that, I thought we had the only decision we've made is $100,000 for feasibility.
No, there's no decision to even do that at this point.
It shouldn't be in our plan then.
That's shown just as a I'll just say, because there's a few other proposed areas of study too, such as the St. John's medical and sports precinct and the Cornelian Bay, South Point. So there's a few planning areas that we know are undergoing that we show the potential for connection there.
But
not to smooth.
If this is a council document, it's referred to as proposed, it sends the message that the council is proposing to do this.
It says actually proposed study, so a study into it.
On the map I thought it said. But it's not even a proposed study.
No, so at the moment, again, so the engagement's happening with the Minister around the options, and so if, again, we come back to the council to make a decision on next steps, so that's still yet, that will occur in the near future.
Yeah, because on page 30, the diagram, it says proposed batch point walkway,
Yep.
which sends the message that the council are proposing to do this. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think I remember voting on that. So it shouldn't be in there.
Okay, note taken.
Yep.
Any other councillor Kitsos?
Thank you, Chair. It sounds like to me from the debate around the table that this document has somehow become a little bit confused between whether it's internal or external document. And for example, if this was an external document that you're looking up because you've come to a city and you want to know the safest way to cycle somewhere, you're looking for specific information, probably not proposed projects, but the current safe cycleways, which talks to my question around safety, which I think, having had a little bit more time to think about it, I think what I'd like to see in those description of each route, if you can't say which one's safer, then perhaps examples of suitability, that these routes are likely to be suitable for family use, e-bikes, road bikes, or more things like these types of cycle routes are more likely to have less car movements or have wider streets, or just so that it gives you something to kind of indicate what you might expect once you're on the route. But I think talking about treatments is really key to understanding what these routes do look like and being able to provide that information to the public as well. But also it's a little bit of crystal ball thinking. It hasn't been approved, we don't know when we're going to be able to deliver it. So that's when the conversation gets tangled between what we do have and what we are recommending to what we would like to have and what we can recommend in the future. So that's probably just a question for you to have a think about, to make clearer to us, so that we can make a decision on this plan as it currently stands or as it will be in the future, and is it guiding future development, future projects, future funding, future treatments as a guide for all of us, or is this something that we can take out to the community and say this is where our safe cycleways are?
Yeah, it's definitely not the latter. This is definitely a plan for our investment in cycling infrastructure in that regard. It's different from a planning tool. I want to run today from here to there. How do I get there safely? That's not what this does. This is an investment guidance tool for how we go about investing in our infrastructure.
So when you were talking about putting it on the website and people being able to filter through the routes, is that the proposed future use of this plan, or is that the current, what we want people to currently be able to do?
Future use.
Future use, okay. But this, to develop and put this level of infrastructure in place, is a many multi-year project. So at what point would you foresee that we would be able to provide a tool like that to the community? Because I think it's very much needed.
A planning tool for route.
Yeah.
There is actually an existing document that I believe Cycling South put together, and it's a few years old now, but it is that cycling map that you would use if you were trying to figure out a route that you wanted to take recreationally to see the city, or as you're pointing out, to look for a safe place that you can take your kids on for the trip you need to make. And that might be, if this document isn't serving that audience quickly enough, that might be necessary to just point people to that as a resource within the page, and let them know that that's a great resource that's probably hasn't been spruiked recently.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarity.
Councillor Passot.
Thanks. Great job. Good job. Good presentation. I think that internal versus external question is really important. It seems to me that it is largely an internal facing document. If it is internal facing, can we be careful about how we handle it in that sense? Because almost the worst case scenario would be if it became public facing without adequate explanation, and that everybody thinks a primary route is a separated cycleway, because that's not what's going to happen. There's multiple different criteria, as I understand it, for how you assess if a road needs a protected cycleway versus an on-road cycleway versus painted lines, including traffic volume. There's a key consideration. So it can be a primary route, but on a low traffic volume street, and that doesn't necessitate a protected cycle lane. And so I'm concerned, because we've already had an elected member tonight say every primary route will be a protected cycleway, when that's not the case. That is a very big risk of this document becoming public facing without adequate explanation. So it is, I think that you have to to be very careful with how that's handled. All things considered, I think I agree with Councillor Elliott about including the city. If you want to have a single source of truth, I think that's a really reasonable thing to do, to include the city map. But to guide development moving forward of the cycleway, I think that you should have the proposed projects in there. I think there's been enough Battery Point Walkway proposals over the years to call it up in this, even though it's not specific. We have previously had multiple different proposals for Battery Point Walkway, and it's a critical transport link and critical technical bike plan for Hobart. So to not include it would be remiss, I think. So I would leave it in there, as well as any other proposed projects that they've got. All things considered, I think that it's a good document. It's good to see that it's pulled everything together. And I guess the other question I've got is, how will asset renewal use it? So there's a number of a little bit of commentary in there around asset renewals and trying to leverage them, which is a great thing. But will it be a system where the asset renewal team looks at the bike plan and goes, that street's not listed, don't need to talk to them? Or will it be you guys seeing the list of asset renewals and going, blah, 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 we need to talk to them about that one, that they are actually different outcomes? Do you have a plan?
We do. So we work really well with David and his crew. So we've got, at the moment, so we'll catch up with them every couple of months formally for a couple of hours to go through, not next year, but 3-4 years ahead.
Awesome.
We've also obviously identified through all the lamps, all of these, all the lines on the maps, and in order to activate them, they come from degrees of projects. So there are projects that sit behind that activation. A lot of those, as we've talked about tonight, identified through the school access job plans, the lamps, neighbourhood plans. So there are projects in and I think we've talked to council about 4 and 10 year investment plans around. So the short answer is yes, they are sort of outlined in that. What we do with our planning with David's crew is we make sure we align our renewals with a planned project. So for example, if you've got we do one we identified the other day for Strickland Avenue, there's a footpath renewal linearly happening at the top end in 28-29. So we've identified there was a project that was a travel plan that was actually planned for 28-20, or other way around. So what we've done is, rather than doing them separately, we've put them together, because that makes sense to do it at the same time. And there was another one where we didn't just have the two of them, but also had stormwater. I can't remember what that was, because stormwater are also involved in those conversations. And we've now also got our greening people involved in those conversations. So what you've got are all these, rather than have disparate projects happening across it's all come together in a really nice, neat capital investment for internally plans.
And that's great internally.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great internally, really good stuff internally. I think there is opportunities still to leverage external bodies doing work like Taswater and Tas Networks. Like the last, I've said it so many times, we resurfaced footpath, and then Tas Networks come along and they're like, oh, we're replacing the pole there, and then they just dig up what we just did. Really annoying from a public optics perspective and also public budget. But yeah, no, all in all, I think it's a good document. I did have something else, but it's jumped on, so thank you very much, guys.
Okay, the last speaker we have is Lord Mayor. Okay, Alderman Bloomfield, I've just seen you.
To add a little bit more. We've talked about inwards and outwards looking reports and so forth, but I'm just a bit concerned because this workshop we all made public, which means everything in here, all the papers that we received are already public. The public have already read them. So it's like the cat's out of the bag. We can't say, oh, we'll now make this internal. It doesn't kind of work. So I think there has to be a general acceptance that if it's in this open forum and we have let the public in, because that's what we did a couple of years ago, that we have to accept that anything that comes from this, unless it's enclosed, will be a public document. That was the first thing. And also too, I think we have to be careful too when we have to define what projects are truly on hold or in consideration or not on consideration. Because if we're going to do that, we have to be careful, because we could find ourselves prosecuting the cable car again, and I think a lot of the people in the room would never like to see that again. So I think we have to be kind of careful how we define when a project is dead, when a project is in abeyance, when a project is in consideration, because we don't really have a very clear view on that either. So there was just some points I want to make, just so that we actually get some clarity in this room, because talking inwards and outwards, honestly, the public do listen to this. They do read our stuff that comes through. It's all available. So we can't just take, oh, by the way, we're just going to pull that in. It doesn't work. It's not going to happen. So we need to be a little bit more honest about that, I think.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Greatly appreciated. You've taken those notes, and I've seen the director taking notes as well. Thank you. Excellent. All right, 7.3, waterfront interpretation projects. I invite the manager, Creative City, and Director, Community and Economics Development to introduce the item, and then we'll follow the same format of questioning, clarification, and then discussion and debate. Thank you.
Good evening, elected members. We're going to present on the waterfront interpretation project, and I've got my arts and cultural team who are both going to present on this, so I will hand it over to Jane to start.
It's fine. Apologies to Councillor Harvey in advance. It will be a landscape format. It's a trigger warning. So the first few slides I'll present, which provides some context for what the waterfront interpretation project is and where it's come from, and then Alex will present the waterfront interpretation proposal. So we'll click on. Yeah. Okay. So what is it? It's a suite of contemporary interpretation or storytelling for the waterfront. It has Palawa and non-Palawa content. Its aim is to replace a lot of existing really degraded interpretation which is on the waterfront. And also importantly with this project, across the City of Hobart, we don't actually have a lot of interpretation or storytelling across any of our precincts. So this will be a bit of a prototype for how it could operate across the city in general. So in terms of background, it was developed in the first place to respond to the Gell report. It's like ancient history back in 2010, where Gell recommended that we strengthen the waterfront as a people place. Then the city placemaking team did two fairly small reports, one done by Inspiring Place for what it could be, and the other was the Aboriginal team at TMAG also did reports, both of which will form background to the piece of work that we're doing. In 2023, we did a brief and an expression of interest nationally for teams to come up with proposals for a waterfront interpretation project. We shortlisted 3 who developed concepts, and then a successful provider was selected. Ironically enough, the successful provider was Alex Miles before her role for the council as an independent designer. So in 2025, we got Capital Works funding to support this project over 2 years. So this gives you an idea. We've got 23 interpretation panels at the moment on the waterfront, and these were installed in the late 1980s. So they're not only physically degraded, they're kind of conceptually degraded as well. There's a real emphasis on, the achievements of people and industry and great works. And so obviously we're using the term storytelling, and so the emphasis would change to be about experience more than achievement. So the aims of this project, designed to interpret the waterfront as a people place through engaging theme stories where Palawa content is foundational. And that's pretty important, the Palawa stories being foundational, because we've got a lot of people living in the city and coming to the city really interested in understanding Aboriginal stories of this place, and we really don't have very many. So it's place-led by the qualities and aspirations of the areas that make up the waterfront, rather than just being about history. It's also about celebrating local writers and language. We are a UNESCO City of Literature, so it's a good opportunity for local writers. Also aims to spark curiosity and encourage locals and visitors to think and explore further, to highlight what is unseen. So it's not just about buildings, it's about experience. It's to evoke a sense of pride in the people of Nipaluna Hobart, and we also intend to include elements for children and families. So in terms of engagement, so we've got a project team, and Tony Brown, Paloman Tony Brown, has been on the team from the beginning. So he assisted in writing the brief for the project. He also assisted in the selection of designers, and he also briefed the designers before they began work. We also have an Aboriginal reference panel specifically for this project, and that includes Alan Mansell, Teresa Sainty, Gillian Mundy, Zoe Rimmer and Liz Tew have provided advice about what Alex is going to present. And then also Tony Brown will present to the TAC after the workshop. So also we've got physical or geographical stakeholder consultation. So obviously Tasports is the landowner, so we've presented to them numerous times. We've presented to the Tasmania Museum and Art Gallery, MAC 1, Elizabeth Street Pier. All of those organisations have been really supportive about the proposal, and we're still yet to engage with the Maritime Museum, commercial fishers, viewers and tourism businesses. So the kind of workshop is in the middle of our consultation period, but the consultation's pretty targeted. Over to Alex to explain the project.
Great, thanks Jane. So we've started with a theme that hopefully will provide an experience for visitors that gives them a sense of place that moves beyond the usual historical kind of narratives that we have. So we can sort of cross time, stories and cultures by using this idea of echoes. And so also within the space we're trying to also capture the essence of the place through some of the more ephemeral experiences you have on the waterfront. And so I'll click through. The way we intend to do that is, and it's quite handy having this beautiful photo of Nipaluna here in front of us. We'll be looking at an area that extends from about Waterman's Dock, which is over where the little red ferry is, and the Mona Wharf, all the way across to this side to what's now Hunter Street. And we've kind of contained it in that space so that it feels like it's a unified kind of product, I guess, that we're delivering to people who are visiting, and it's manageable in terms of its scale. One of the important things too is that this isn't just for visitors, although obviously down on the waterfront it's going to be highly visible by people arriving by boat. You know, it's a really popular place at all sort of times of the year, but it's also for people who live here. And I think that's really important, that storytelling relates as well to our locals. And so the way we're talking about delivering it is through a series of discovery points, where there'll be opportunities to engage with sort of three-dimensional forms, or perhaps something that's integrated into the infrastructure already. And then to accompany that, we'll have story panels. It might be 2 or 3 at one side, it might be 1 at another. It will depend on the theme that's driving the story. And then to support this, we'll also have online content. So we'll have a map, and we'll have QR codes that will allow people to hear accessible audio content, and also links to kind of drive people further, to explore further within the city, whether that's to TMAG or to events. And the beauty of the online content is that it's kind of updatable, and so it can always remain fairly current. So this map on the right, so it's a little bit light, it sort of shows 2 interesting maps. You've got the sort of light orange colour in the background, which shows the original waterline, which will be an important theme that we address in the interpretation. And then overlaying that, you can see where the contemporary kind of structure of the roads falls. And the little orange dots are the preliminary suggested locations for potential stories. And so those will be chosen also by what, in terms of what infrastructure's there, what activities happen there during the year. Obviously, it's a really highly used space. Sometimes there's the Wooden Boat Festival, other times there's, you know, the City of Hobart, all sorts of things happening, so we have to keep that in mind. We'll have traffic coming from the stadium. So we that's in the back of our mind when we're choosing our locations. So the way we've devised it is that there'll be maybe around 10 particular sites, and each site, rather than talking about a kind of a chronological narrative or historical telling of the waterfront, we're going to talk about certain themes that will then allow us to talk about a range of topics, whether it's, Palawa history, whether it's post-colonial history, whether it's contemporary times, or whether it's even asking questions about, the future for Hobart as well. And I think that's really important, that people can put themselves in the stories and connect with it in some way as well. So, for example, we might have something like natural balance, for example, where we can talk about the Nunani, the Munina, the Mumarimana, in one sense, but we can also talk about the stories and the themes that cross time, I guess. So you might take Wales, for example, as a story or as a symbol of something that can be represented back then, it could be represented now in the future, like where are we now, what are we doing, what's the environment, what's happening with the climate. So there's all these sort of really interesting ways we can tie stories to these themes. And so to give us a bit of a structure, we've got 2 story curators. Steph Carlin will be writing the themed stories and responding to the themed stories with input from Teresa Sainty, Pakana woman, and she'll be curating the Palawa stories that we incorporate, and also writing stories especially for children. And that's going to be an important part of this project as well, because we're really trying to engage with younger people as well. At each of these sites, we'll also incorporate a feature writer. This will be a short piece. It'll be quite an emotive piece that responds to the themes, and so we'll provide lots of different perspectives, but also kind of an opportunity to celebrate our amazing writers, and to also reinforce that, Hobart is a city of literature. So an example, so some imagery, and all of this at the moment, we're still in concept development stage and consultation stage, so we're developing the stories to be included. But an example might be here that if we're taking natural balance as an example, there's opportunities to integrate story and form into a space that's quite interactive and immersive in a way. Not everyone would be this interactive, but for example, this might represent, the blue dots might represent the whalebacks breaching, and there might be an opportunity to incorporate little kind of puffs of mist. And then the story would appear on panels nearby. And what I was explaining about the way the stories might be told to a theme is that, for example, you could tell a story of travel along Timtamiliminanya before colonial times, where people were using the river and trading and moving between the different sides of the river. Or it might be a story about whaling. It might be a story about natural resources. Why was this place so sought, and what were the resources that were there, and how were they used, how were they managed, how were they mismanaged, and what does that mean for the future? So there might be a story about, whaling, for example, about stories of protest. Like Hobart's also always been a site of differing opinions, of protest and action and resilience. And so there's opportunities to tell different types of stories within one theme and in one place. So this just shows an example of how we might actually incorporate the physical panel structures into the waterfront. And so, still an aesthetic that's very much waterfront, fairly simple, kind of elegant opportunities to incorporate imagery and text.
Is it just worth mentioning there that we're looking at the timber coming from the sequoias in St David's Park that need to be taken out, so having it milled and reusing it.
And some of the interpretation may not include written words, it might just include audio. So, for example, this is one concept we're working through at the moment where we might incorporate song, spoken word, voices of the contemporary community into a sculptural form that has audio incorporated, and at night time also might be illuminated so that it kind of glows at night time, potentially revealing a secondary layer of storytelling amongst it as well. And so all of these we're working through at the moment with our reference group and our writers and our stakeholders, which we've shared this sort of initial concept document with, and so far has been really well received by the stakeholders down there. So timeline, that's where we're sitting at the moment. So in fact, early or late last year, right through till March, we've been developing the concept, also setting up this sort of reference group and consulting with them over the appropriate stories or interesting stories to be told. This next couple of months we'll be developing the actual stories and starting to communicate more widely about the project. We'll be sharing it with various Aboriginal stakeholder groups and then working into design development. So through the whole process we'll be consulting with our reference group. It's very much a project that we'll be developing together with them, and we should have our, let's see where we're up to. We're looking at having all the design development completed kind of by the end of this financial year, and looking to move into fabrication in the second half of this year, with completion early 27.
Complete.
That's it.
Complete.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. Okay. We'll again begin with questions, clarifications, and then we'll go into it. Let me ask you the first question. How much will this cost, and is it already been budgeted?
Yes.
Okay.
The total budget at the moment is $230,000 for 10 sites, including writers, and it has been costed and approved as part of the capital works plan.
Thank you. Hold on with Bluefield.
I like the whole concept, it's great. I like the fact that you're including multiple cultures through that, which is also just as important. But there's 10 different sites. Are they going to be connected, and if so, how? Is that going to be via a map, via an app, or is it going to be like a physical line that we can follow, like a visual line?
I think it's designed so that if you want to, you could do all 10, or you might just happen upon one and not want to do the trail. There will be a web presence for it, and we will probably do some kind of, brochure that helps people navigate between them for tourists if they want to. But it would also be quite powerful if you just came upon the mussels. You wouldn't have to, you wouldn't have to read all of them to understand one of them.
Yeah, no, but what I mean is though that you want to kind of encourage people to experience the trail.
Yeah.
And is this on Tasport's land or council land?
Tasport.
So that's why we probably won't be able to get a trail then, because we couldn't get one even for the cruise ships when we tried to do that.
No, although on each of them we could have a reference to the next one along.
Yeah.
So we could kind of say 50 metres to your right is this themed.
I just feel it'd be really good to, if they find one, then they can kind of like be gently suggesting that, look, there's all this other that you can do.
Yeah.
Let them have a journey.
There will be QR codes and the online map, so if you are any site, you can click in and know where
Good. It was just making sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lord Mayor.
A couple of questions. So that seems incredibly good value to do something that's sort of new and interesting and might last for 20 years for $240,000.
Yeah, I have to say one of the savings is probably the fact that Alex is now an employee, so she's doing the design of it as an employee rather than an external contractor.
Is there, so that makes my question is there a need for any additional, like we've got to be setting the budget for 26, 27, is there any need for additional budget?
At this stage, not. On our timeline, because it's still conceptual, we haven't had all the elements costed, and they're obviously completely bespoke. We hope we're in the ballpark. There's a small chance that the mussels might be 1.5 times what we've costed. In which case our plan would be to put in a bid for contingency funds towards end of financial year.
Another question, just around Tasports and whether they're willing to make a contribution to some part of this, like, for example, would they be willing to take down those heavily branded flags and do something more arty around these sites? Because they've recently put up all this intense branding, like the flags around the waterfront, and I understand they want to make their name known in some ways, although I think it's a little bit odd, but like to actually, even just a handful of contributory things from them, or funding towards some of the sort of electronic elements. Are they taking any interest in it at all?
I think they're really interested in the project. We've only met with them sort of officer to officer to, gauge their interest, whether it's a huge no, we're not going to do that. What we wanted to do was get to the stage where we have a pretty refined proposal, and then maybe at quite a senior level, maybe Michael's level, kind of go to the head of their organisation to pitch it formally with what we need from them.
Right, which includes their permission on the...
It does.
To even install any of it. Yeah. But none of it presumably would get in the way of the working port sort of concept.
No, the only one I was slightly worried about were the mussels, but then we met with Mac1, it's their land, and they said, go for it. We love it, we're happy for you to put it on our land. So no, I mean the plan is to use existing infrastructure and to not add clutter to that space, so no.
Another question was just around whether any of this could be staged, and I'm just conscious that I'm thinking about, is it October or September, we have the International Whaling Commission meeting in Hobart, which is a global meeting of all the whaling people, and like it'd be kind of nice if there was at least a sign about the whaling history around that time, but or are you basically going to get it all ready and then install it all at once in 2027?
That's the plan.
Any other questions? No. Got questions? Please, Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. The signs, will they be illuminated at night?
We haven't made provision for that, but I would imagine it would be interesting to know what lighting is down there actually, and
I know I mean more on the panel, just a soft, warm look. So if I'm there, it's in the middle of winter, which we have a lot of people standing around the wharf at night, and we espouse to be a nighttime economy, and and all that. A soft hue on that would look good. It does provide challenges, and it's going to blow your budget a bit, but it'd be sad to see people have a little light, get their torch and an iPhone out or whatever phone they're using, sort of going all across it. It's going to be harder to photograph.
That's a good point.
And I think it'd be very, very a good idea to probably look at doing that.
Yeah.
And especially the installation, getting the wiring to it and all that.
I think the thing we'll do is when we confirm what our sites are, we'll have a look at what the light levels of those are at night.
Yeah, look, I think even with the lights around and all that, you're not going to be able to read detail on that. And we don't want it as a trick in getting the right light, of course. It's just a soft, warm part that people can just look at,
Yeah, we can definitely look at that.
So it's going to be considerable. I haven't finished.
We'll have the discussion later.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I did have another question.
Please.
The 10 sites, are they set pretty much, or you got ideas to add on or take away?
I think 10 was chosen as a nice round number that was achievable for the budget as well. But I think also providing just the right amount of content for the space as well. And so at the moment the sites are still...
Can I have a look at that on the...
Yes.
The locations aren't set. So we made some assumptions. We did a walk the other day and then moved some of them because we had some on Davies Street, felt it was too loud, so are going to tend to kind of push them back towards the foreshore. But I think as the writers begin to write, particularly Steph and Teresa, they might have other ideas about where they think things should go in response to the themes.
Yeah, because I've got a few ideas myself.
It'll be good to have those ideas presented.
So,
yeah. So
this,
question.
More questions? Yes,
yeah,
questions.
please.
Yeah. So these proposed sites, will they be coming back to us for final sign off on that?
I think we will. So we obviously the team's been consulting, after coming to council, so that we've got those permissions, etc. But as one of the things that is that it's a thoroughfare. We've got accessibility issues, and particularly like with the signage and existing signage, new signage. So and then the 3D forms. So I guess that's also part of the discussion around where is the best position, as well as where are those stay points, where are people coming from and going to. Yeah.
So if I or a member of the public had an idea of an additional one, they think you haven't got on there, which would be good. What's the best way?
Just come through Ben, councillor. Come through Ben Art Hub.
Okay.
Conversations. Just that's what the purpose of the workshops are.
Yeah.
Obviously, if there's other factors that we can consider, then come through Ben and we can have a look at it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any contributions of ideas? Just Councillor Basalt.
Thank you, Chair. Great work, very exciting. A number of considerations, I guess, for me. I agree with Councillor Kelly about lighting. I think that's really important. Just given the winter, it's dark at 4:30 and there's still plenty of people around. Has there been any consideration of phase 1, phase 2, not from within this plan of 10, but for an additional 10?
No, and I suppose I prefaced it with, at the moment we've got nothing.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that once we do 10, we'll all love it so much that we immediately start planning for the next ones, and that might be in a totally different precinct.
Yeah, so I think it's really exciting. The muscles really got me going. To be honest, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly the sort of stuff that we're missing down there, is these illuminating, again, because of daylight. We need more stuff that is playful at night in Hobart. But I would love to see like the old shoreline recognised more heavily, but also that it extended all the way around to Syro and that kind of Battery Point precipice. And that's how I would see the phase 2 working, would be actually to extend to tell more stories along that coastline and draw people out, particularly our visitors, out from the traditional Salamanca stop, like waterfront Salamanca kind of stop, but to go out, because there's quite a specky view out there as well on the precipice there. The other element, I know in Bloomfield message mentioned a trail. At the moment we have like a waterfall shop floor, like industrial shop floor walkway, painted walkway, yellow lines on there. That is the designated pedestrian zone, as it is in a literal industrial factory. Is there any thoughts or have been put that we could have walking art, painted art, the whole way along this trail?
It's not part of the scope of this project, but I take your point. I know the walkway. I think at this point, this project is about removing the old existing signage, replacing it with something contemporary and new, and I think in that way it's a pilot for future ideas and considerations. So if you're thinking that is a great option for a phase 2 of sorts, then
I think I'd really like to see mentioned in this document something about a potential phase 2, so that when you go out to consultation with the community, when ideas that I haven't thought of or you guys haven't thought of come forward, and you go, oh, that's brilliant. That'll be, so these additional ideas will be considered in a potential phase 2, something that kind of maybe just nudges the door open for council, or a future council, because it probably will be a future council that makes that decision, to go in for proper phase 2.
This has CapEx funding for this and next financial year. So I think as we continue to brief the elected members and head towards the conclusion of this fair of 2027, we'll be able to, it's actually 27, 28. So we'll be able to, start to gather that information for consideration.
Yeah, my final comment is just that that water puffs idea. There's nothing playful for kids anywhere in Hobart. The best they've got is the Dutch fountain to put leaves in. So that the idea of something like that is really terrific. So excellent work, well done.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Actually probably is a bit of a question, but I was wondering, with the content that's produced to go on the panels and the stories, is it going to be sort of neutral content that talks about our history? And I'm excited about having more of that Aboriginal perspective brought in, but I also have a bit of a nervousness. Is there a chance that this could be used for like activist type stuff, where colonial sort of history is we've called invaders and things like that, or is it going to be more neutral?
We've actually spoken about that. The intent is information, and the feel or the vibe is kind of fairly joyous. It doesn't have a political intent.
Good.
Having said that, we're going to have 10 pieces of creative writing, and one of the authors of that may have a more political intent, but they will be the author for that. And I think
what for that, sorry?
They'll be the author for that, and they'll be named. So we'll have, but Steph and Teresa are going to respond to the themes, and that content will be sort of factual or more neutral across time. What the selected writers choose to write about, the intent isn't that it will be political, but I mean we also can't stop them.
Well, we could stop them if you gave guidelines. So they've been given free rein to write whatever they feel.
Well, there will be guidance, and they will be responding to the waterfront. But yeah, I mean, we're not going to kind of micromanage the voice of authors. I suppose it just depends on the authors that we choose, but it isn't the intent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I just fully support the concept, and there's nothing, I think it's completely appropriate to talk about the sad things that happened in these locations, or that to be drawn in. But I wouldn't want to see this used as real estate for divisiveness and people being guilted and shamed for things, because there's other places for that, but using ratepayer funds in those locations is not it, in my opinion.
It's not the intent.
Good, thanks.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, when I saw the oysters, I mean the mussels, I automatically said should be oysters because they've got a better story than mussels. The native flat oyster was a real staple in Hobart, and we still have the notches in the wall over there, where people sharpened their knives to shuck the oysters on Argyle Street. So I'm more interested in that story, because there's a story of hope in that as well, for the day when we put forward a motion to restore the oyster beds in the Derwent using Pacific oyster shells to restore flat oysters, reefs in the Derwent, which will happen in the next, well, hopefully before I'm dead, but next 20 years or so. So that's a better story for me. Just point, and the other ones I don't recognise what they were. That one I picked up on because I'm interested in that particular issue.
Thank you very much. That's about it. Yeah. Anyone's asking anybody else? Yeah. Please, Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, look, it's a great concept about time to update those old sites, and something we can build on too, isn't it? We can go further along the estuary up to the main and out the river, or the estuary out towards Milling Bay and all that. So, yeah, I'd hate to see a situation where, people are going to get upset with what's on there. The last thing we want is another contentious issue for the city. And this should be a beautiful thing, if it's designed right, and the subtlety of it's key, I guess, to it. And I think it's going to be a great project for the city, but it's all in the design and how that is, instead of some garish looking big thing that's going to date in 5 years. And all that. But I get back to illumination. I'd really, encourage you to have a good look at that to see if that can be illuminated on the sign itself, not from a spotlight.
We're still definitely at the stage where we can include that in scope
Yeah,
of work.
yeah. And there was one other thing I was going to say. Can we get a copy of this? Are we going to get this slideshow here tonight?
It will be published on
It's not on the.
Yes, sure.
It's not on supporting information. But we'll get that, will we?
Will be circulated to the elected.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Where Tony Brown is going to present it to the TAC, and just because of the sensitivity around Aboriginal content, we are just kind of not going live with it. And the other thing is, it's at a point where things can still change as we're working on it over the next couple of months. So I suppose we just don't want to present it as a fait accompli at this stage.
So will we come back, what the written form of each sign be? Will that be coming back to council to approve?
Yeah, we'll bring back, this is a 2-year project, so we'll be presenting several times, and I think like other times, those key points when the design is completed prior to the installation, that type of thing. And we can also, update through the elected member bulletins as well, as much as required.
I think the intent is that we would update you with information, but the intent isn't that it comes back to a council meeting for approval.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, just one quick final thing. I completely support Councillor Kelly's around illumination, just in terms of the look and feel, like the Macquarie Hotel, where all of its rooms are themed around prominent Tasmanians. The look and feel of that. There's panels outside their hotel rooms. That'd be amazing to see that flow through that, which is not dissimilar to what you're doing, like with the bronzes and gold. Yeah.
Councillor Harvey. And then, is there anyone after that? No, Councillor Harvey, you have the last say.
Answered already.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you so much. All right, nobody else? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it. We're moving on now to 7.4, Donny House update and status and future options, presented by the CEO. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So obviously provided a report in the agenda. I've got a few brief slides just to touch off on the key points of the report, but really tonight's about a conversation and an update. So as I said, the presentation will basically update Council on the current status, the constraints and the viability of future use for Dorney House. It's Porter Hill, but specifically focused on Dorney House, and just to receive some direction on Council in respect of the tourism accommodation focus activation pathway that is being recommended in the report, as well as the support that's needed by way of the road access investigation and design as well. So Dorney House, as we know, is a heritage listed architecturally significant house which is positioned on a high value landscape setting. Public bookings for the premise ceased in 2024, and it's largely due to safety hazards and access and parking constraints. That house is currently unused, and it is at threat of deterioration if it's left that way for any significant period of time. Past activation attempts, including the 2016 National Expressions of Interest process that we undertook, were not viable. They didn't produce a viable use for the site, given risk, access limitation and financial constraints. And currently the holding costs continue at about $200,000 for the council to maintain the site with no current revenue. So in terms of its significance, planning context, what is and what uses are possible? So it is heritage listed, it's architecturally significant, and it includes Fort Nelson, and that remains a strong part of the site, and there's a conservation plan for the site that dates back to 2007. The site contributes to the Skyline Reserve outcomes from the 2006 Porter Hill acquisition, which was the reason we bought it for as a council in the first place. So it's zoned environmental management, and that provides discretionary pathways for a number of uses, but it does include tourist operation, visitor accommodation, and compatible low impact food events subject to heritage, our hazards assessment, traffic, bushfire, and the National Construction Code requirements that we have. So what constraints currently exist for the site? So the access, it's a single lane switchback road, it's degraded in sections, and the stormwater issues make it not suitable for general visitors without upgrade. You can see that section of the road there, which is the most problematic, and that's been subject to a historic retaining wall that collapsed, and basically the council's risk management has been to move traffic away from the collapsed section, but it does make for a pretty narrow and you need to know what you're doing driving up there. Parking's highly limited on the site, so it does constrain visitor numbers, and a transport solution is likely required for any future use of the site. So in terms of the services, it has mains water only, so that fills the water tanks on the site. There's no reticulated sewer or stormwater at the site, although there is a connection available to the site. It is subject to heritage, bushfire risk, landslip, and there's natural values constraints for the site as well. In terms of risk, it's a vacant site with limited passive surveillance. There is an increased vandalism and misuse risk, and I've been up there a lot. Very rarely do you go up there without seeing people actually, on the side or walking up and down the driveway. And so it actually is quite active in terms of people on the site. So what's viable and what's not viable? So from my assessment, we've looked heavily at the mixed community use model in the past, and we've trialled that. It has demonstrated not to be financially sustainable given the isolation of the site, its limited access, and the volunteer visitor volume that needs to happen to make a mixed community program model successful. We've looked at subdivision and sale, and it's difficult. It's not recommended, and it's largely because of the heritage constraints and the likely approval barriers make it difficult to be able to excise the house from the overall site, and obviously to sell it in larger quantity means you lose council control over the long-term values of the site. The tourism and accommodation experience probably best aligns with the site's strengths, so its seclusion, its iconic architecture, its panoramic setting, and that can be managed through a curated low-volume visitation, including bus transport, and as I outlined in the report, that we've had some tourism expertise from our local sector have looked at the site, and I'll give you an example that one of them emailed me over the weekend actually in a minute. I think there is a fallback for residential. If you can't identify a viable tourist or accommodation use, you're better off having someone in there to maintain the heritage value of the place, and there is a discretionary pathway if it's based around supporting conservation, improving security. It would generate some revenue, but not much if it went down that path. So we are recommending focusing an expressions of interest process around a tourism-focused use of the site, and so that could include anything from a curated food and hospitality experience, guided tours and interpretive programs, small-scale events compatible with the constraints. I think we really do need to look at a boutique visitor accommodation, and that could include local low impact accommodation pods subject to approvals, and I'm just highlighting an area there. So that's where the barracks are, and in and around that area is cleared and does create a site that you could have low impact pods, provided the Dorney House is still the dominant structure on the site. Any expressions of interest requirements, we would need to protect the heritage for both the house and the Fort Nelson, and align with environmental and hazard constraints and demonstrate financial viability, including robust risk, safety and transport planning in terms of how they would access the site and utilise the site. I talked about an idea. So one of our local providers, tourist operators from Hobart, gave me this idea from his assessment of the site. I'll just go through it, difficult to read with the black background, but I think that's effective looking at Dorney House, mind you. His suggestion is Dorney House at Porter's Hill Retreat, a 4 to 6 bedroom accommodation, road to handle a 12-seater bus, plan, option to drive or be driven, one guest or group at a time, no multi-check-ins, on-site manager chef, daily breakfast included, one dinner served in Dorney House per 2 nights, minimum 2 nights stay, maximum 7 nights stay, up to 3 dinners at Dorney House. So an immersive experience which respects the highlights in the architecture and the military significance of this unique site. Adopt the existing on-site manager accommodation to be a guest accommodation quarters, but provide some services here, for example, bathrooms and laundry. In terms of the Dorney House itself, keep the architectural integrity of what's famous about it, shore it up, but don't try to change it. Highlight what makes it special, and how it appeals to architects. Make it safe, clearly. Use the house purely as an entertaining dining space for in-house guests. Used by arrangement and always with supervision for those, or supervised by those catering. Adapt the downstairs area into an on-site accommodation for a chef manager if necessary. Somehow use the rear part of the upstairs dwelling for the same. Adapt the kitchen area to catering and hospitality hub to effectively service the main living and entertainment area. Put a lounge area in what was the main bedroom for people to have private chats, and no bedrooms in the house purely for hosting. That's just one person's idea that operates tourism business in Hobart now. So I just thought it was an interesting thing to have a look at. So in terms of enabling investment and the financial context to the house, so look, we are looking at, I think to use the house viably, the entrance needs to be upgraded. So we're anticipating a 50,000 scope and design to be able to do that, and indicative costs very early, but about over $500,000 to upgrade the roads. As I said earlier, it's costing us about $200,000 a year at the moment, primarily in loan interest and maintenance. There is no revenue. There was minimal revenue, about $4,000 a year when we were letting it out, but really no revenue at the moment. So we are locked in. This is an old style of taking loans. I'll just talk to Michelle about it. We're still locked into 10 years of a loan with a remaining balance of about $2.7 million. So an early payout, including the loan break, was about $3 million. So the advice from our finance is, with lost interest based on that loan payout, would be about equivalent to about 1.1 million over the period. So you're better off investing the money than paying the loan out with the early the breakout costs that you have. In terms of what is potential if it is leased, I mean, we haven't done a commercial valuation at this stage. The residential or the government valuation has it a rental value of about 80,000 between the two buildings, the unit and the Dorney House. I expect, based on similar valuations, you would be looking at 80 to 100, maybe a little bit more in terms of, but that again would be depending upon working with a proponent that wants to develop it, because we would need to work with them around what the needs are on the site. So what I'm suggesting by way of next steps is to look at an EOI and really focus that around the tourism, not ruling out others, but focus around the tourism use of the sites and allocate the 50,000, which I think in terms of, we own the site, we need to use the site. We're going to have to upgrade the road, so I think we need to get that design done. And then following the EOI report to council with outcomes and a preferred proponents, and then we can discuss lease terms and requirements for upgrade funding, those sorts of things. And I guess if it's unsuccessful, is then we look at the what next of it, and it's probably better to have someone in there as a caretaker looking after it, as it is to leave it up there, which I think it's threatened as it is, with no one up there and no surveillance, and it's quite removed from any sort of surveillance. So really quick presentation, but there's more detail in the report. Happy to have a chat.
Questions? Councillor Harvey.
No, not questions, got something to say.
Yeah, we'll come to that later. Yeah, we'll come to that. Councillor Kelly.
So, CO, no matter what we do, we've got to spend money on it. And the road's only one component. Surely we've got to spend money if we're talking getting more people, kitchens,
Yeah.
accommodation, I mean, surely the study should include that, you know, because this is just a money pit, and I worry that whilst the road might be factored in, it's all those other things. Because the question is, too, that idea of doing the people there, the cooking and all that, which is fantastic, and I love that idea.
Yeah.
It'd be incumbent upon us as a landlord to put all this in.
Yeah, well...
And grease traps, and it's just huge thing. So that was my question there, that could that, should there not a study on a few of those things as well, not just the road, because once we light the fuse on the road, all the other things that people get excited about, they haven't got cars there and a car park. Great. Oh, now what are we all dressed up and know where to go for everything else?
Yeah, no, there's absolutely going to be more cost associated with it, but again, it's about do your expressions of interest and then work out what the viable use is and then what the cost is to the proponent and then to the council. I mean, I could have a stab at what, you know, there's wastewater costs, if you have to have a package treatment plant, you know, as you say, upgrades to the kitchens, there's things that we can certainly quantify, and we have done a fair bit of quantifying it, but it's tough without sort of knowing specifically what a proponent might, and they would need to invest in it as well. So it wouldn't just be incumbent on the council to pay for it all. So I can do that if
I just think that's got to happen. Yeah. And I've been up there with the tours and that, and know pretty well and looked at it, and it's just a money pit.
We take that later. We take that later. Question.
I'm just backing up my question.
Councillor Kelly. Councillor Elliott, sorry.
When did we lose the existing use rights for residential?
Largely, I think it's, well, there's no definitive time frame for when you lose it, but I think it's something like, if it hasn't been, I think it's 5 years-ish, 2 years. 2 years, it's been defined now, has it? It never was.
Right, okay. And it says that it's prohibited now after we've lost it, but then it says still it's discretionary. So getting back a residential use is possible.
Yeah, well, it's probably likely, but it has to be. It would have to be geared around actually maintaining the heritage value of the site. So, and that's doable for the right person, I think. So.
Yeah. Okay. And so this will come up more when add commentary. But have you had a thought then around? I mean, EOI, and I agree with going out with kind of a blank page and seeing what's out there, but it's not off the table that we could have a model where we leased it to someone for 10 years, knowing that they're going to invest $1 million or whatever it is. Or you haven't had any further thoughts on the model?
Yeah, that would be my preference. Our preference would be to try and enter into a longer term lease and have the proponent cover a lot of the costs. Yeah. There will be costs for us, absolutely, but I think it's reasonable to expect that, you know, kitchen upgrades and other upgrades that they would need to do should fall to them. So.
And they might be able to do, you know, like demountable pods or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Alderman Bloomfield.
Look, I guess I'm not used to looking at projects like this without a cash flow budget plan. And I'm supposing really that it's probably too early because we're not really sure what we're actually planning for. But I would be eager to see something devised so that we're starting to get into the concrete area, because I don't think anything we do can go...
So what's the question?
Well, I'm just talking about the cash flow budget.
Yeah, we will come to it later, so we'll have the opportunity.
Just on that though, to answer the question, I mean, that would need to be part of the expressions of interest and the assessment in the business case, I guess, that you would consider as part of whether you want to move forward or not. I do think going out with a relatively blank page and seeing what's out there and then doing the due diligence around the preferred applicant would be, otherwise, I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios to cover off.
Thanks.
Question, Councillor Kitsos.
I did say it in the day, but I don't think I did miss it. Did we look at selling it?
You can't really sell. Well, you have to subdivide it to sell it. If you want to sell it, you're selling the whole thing, which I don't think the council can. I mean, we bought it for a particular reason. So.
I guess it's can we sell it like to the land conservation, you know, for a specific covenant on it?
It's got a covenant on it now, but yeah. Well,
I think they want to.
Given that
I think we did look
at
that at
excuse me.
Yeah, if it's not, it is in there, but I don't think it's an option to sell it unless you can subdivide it. So.
Any other questions? Okay, comments, ideas. Alderman Zuko first.
It's been sitting there for a long time, and I think when you've got an asset that sits there, and any Tom, Dick and Harry can just walk in there and damage it and do whatever they want to do with it, I think we've got to bite the bullet. I think putting out expressions of interest is the first step. I know there's going to be a lot more costs associated with it all. You did say that there is potential sewerage. How far away is that?
Well, it's connected down the bottom, but as you've been, it's a long way.
Yeah.
So you might want to look at a packaged treatment plant potentially.
Yeah. Okay. Easy. Okay. Yeah. I'm just saying. Okay. So because that's going to be the main issue if you're doing catering up there is you need a treatment plant up there or something similar. Anyway, I look, at the end of the day, it's costing us $200,000 a year, right? And it's not protected. I think, we could end up potentially, someone going up there and lighting it up and burning it down, then we've lost the heritage aspect of it all completely.
And that'd be part of the story.
Councillor Harvey.
4 times already.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm just making. I think, yes, I understand the road will cost, 600,000 plus, and there might be another mill on top of that. I'm just saying, yeah, but that will not necessarily be just for us, and it's the deal you make with the proponent, and the lease you give the proponent. Like, to my point of view, if I was going to invest in something like that, I wouldn't be seeking a 10-year lease. I'd be seeking something in the 30s. And if you get a lease in the 30s, proponents would look at it and say, yeah, I'm going to get my return, in that time. So I'm happy to go ahead with the 50,000 expenditure on a EOI. At least that way there we get some people that might have some really good ideas on what they want to do with it, and I think at the end of the day protects it. I understand, it's been said about trying to sell it. I think that creates a massive problem, I think, also with the loan we originally got from the federal government. I think the only, if I can recall what I read, the only component we can sell is the house, I think, but we can't sell the land because we got funding for the land. That was the reason why we ended up buying it. Personally, I think it was not a very good idea at the time. We should have built the tramway. But anyway,
that was in your time.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. It's your turn.
Yeah, a couple of points. Firstly, Paddy Dorney is still in Hobart, I think, who's the architect.
Yeah, I know Paddy Paul.
Yeah, so I'd like to see what he thinks as well.
Yeah, so he's got this report, so he'll provide some feedback on it. So,
Yeah,
but I have engaged with him 3 or 4 times about this, so, including last week. So.
Okay, and secondly, I had a conference in Sydney, I don't know, last year or the year before, whatever it was, and it coincided with Taylor Swift's concert in Sydney. So there was no accommodation anywhere. So I ended up sleeping on an island in one of those glamping tents on Cockatoo Island, and it's fantastic. It's a historical site, really interesting, and the tents are awesome. The amenities are really good. So I'm keen on this concept of a tourism venture or accommodation venture. It's something to consider. It might be really simple. It might just be as simple as really cool glamping sort of tents.
Absolutely.
And during things like Dark Mofo and other festivals, I think they'd be really popular. And throughout the year, don't know what it'd be like there, but the idea of having a package that gets you up and down, that potentially can feed you a certain number of meals. But you're putting the services up there, though, the sewerage, but that could also be an eco, there's ways and means of doing that.
Yeah.
Rather than hooking it up to the
I think it's more likely to be a package treatment plant than it is to connect to the sewer, I suspect.
But the concept's good, and I agree with Marty Alderman Zuko for an expression of interest. If someone wanted to take it on, but in partnership with the council maybe, or I don't know how it would work, that's for you to work out, but I'm keen to see this building used. It sat there without any ideas for a long time. The ideas have been put forward, but nothing's ever been solid with it. So I think this is potentially, with the advice of your colleague in tourism industry, whoever that was. I think there were some good points that were made.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Look, I've really thought long and hard about this one, and it's a really thorny issue, and it's a really tough one. You just look at the potted history of all the decisions that are being made and the ideas, and nothing's happened. And there's a good reason nothing's happened. It's bloody expensive, and it's problematic. I'm just really struggling to sort of understand, is this the lane we should be in with juggling this and the complexities of it, and who goes in there, and it's all going to come back on us whether it's successful or not, and how well it's done and all that. And there's millions, I tell you now, there is absolutely millions that has to be spent on this, whether it's a sewer pipeline going down there or it's contained upstairs there. There's all this fire risk. We've seen how it's already been burnt down a couple of times before up there. Every way you turn on this, it's big problems. And I'd strongly look at, I'm not convinced that we could not sell this place. If it's going to be bought by someone, these places with a good owner and persons who would buy somewhere like this would do a good job on it, I'm sure. There's covenants on all the other surrounding land that can't be built on, and we can put rules and regulations to how we'd like to see the future of it as well. So, there's everything in that house needs upgrading. Everything, from the electrical to fire management to plumbing. This road, I'm not convinced this road's going to be done for that figure. Then you've got to put parks in up the top, camping grounds. I don't know, tents are great for 2-3 months of the year here. It's just could sit there idle. I just think too we should be really looking at as an option of selling this. By all means, let's do an expression of interest. If we could do this internally, and we're not getting consultants in to do it, I'd be up for an EOI on it. But I don't see the need to spend money on a study on how much the road is going to be until we find out what's going to go. If we get an EOI that's like that one that was put to Michael before, a bit of an idea, and everyone thought that was a good idea, yes, that will influence as to what studies have got to be done on there. So I think we could spend 50 grand on a road, then go, oh, by the way, we need this, this and this, when that could and should be bundled in the one study based upon what the EOI stuff is. And it might be that miraculously or for whatever reason we go, actually, we can sell that place. We're comfortable that a new custodian of it will do the right thing and do that, and all the other surrounding areas, the skyline and the park values are locked in. So I'll just be careful what we go for there. The other thing was, what was it? There was one other thing. I'll come back to it.
Come back to it, okay. Lord Mayor?
Thank you. I think the advice is pretty clear that the sale option probably isn't really an option. It's now public bushland. Presumably we've got track assets and stuff through that area. Yeah, so I think, and I think that would be controversial with the community. Even if you did put covenants and things on it, people would say, well, this was the bicentennial gift, and I do appreciate the history that there's been a lot of investigation of the subdivision challenges. It is challenging. I think, there is a strong possibility the house will go one day, unfortunately with a bushfire. It's gone twice before, and that possibly could happen again. I support going out for an EOI, but I guess I would prefer to have an EOI that's a little bit more, still allowing creativity and entrepreneurship.
You will still allow it. I guess what I'm wanting to is tailor that, but it'll still allow other options. Like, for instance, the school's interested in it, Hutchins, for instance, as an educational use. That's something that we could look at.
I guess I meant, what I was going to say was just wanting to put a few caveats around what is and isn't appropriate.
Yeah.
One is I'm just a little bit concerned about that block of land and how any visual impact that might have on either seeing out of the house
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
being able to see the house. So that would have to be something that,
Yeah.
you know, we put some boundaries around.
Sure.
Because I just know if we put it out to an EOI and there's a big square red boundary in it, people will say, oh, you know, this could be, you know, something that's visual, has a visual impact. So it's just, I guess, just EOIs, even though they aren't committing us to anything, I think we just don't want to have all the challenges of people of a backlash against it. So I think we should be talking about what we do want, and you know, I think something that does allow enough certainty for an entrepreneur that they can contribute to the infrastructure. So whether that's 10, 15, I don't know what sort of number of years, I think, you know, something that's clear about that. My preference with the road would be that we don't do anything with it, and we actually say that, I mean, you go to lots and lots of places for tourism around the world. You go to a Thai island or whatever, and you know, you get around by little sort of buggies. These aren't, you know, cars, or the actual walk up to it could be part of the whole experience.
Yeah.
Except unless you've got, you know, disability, and then you've got these little sort of delivery buggies. But I worry about us investing in the road, and you know, I think $500,000 for what will be potentially a private business, and something that's going to be quite isolated. I do worry about it, and I think could we allow to see whether that you know, and again, an entrepreneur can find that part of it, that part of the experience actually, you know, help sell the experience. You know, something where you actually do have to arrive on foot, and it's a bit of a journey, and you have a bit of a tour as you go. I mean, I don't know. But again, yeah, through Capes and all sorts of places that are very popular don't have, you know, delivery vans delivering things, and this isn't that hard to get things to really. But so yeah, I imagine some sort of little glamping thing with or just something that does have experiences with food, and a walk and some time up there would be viable. But whether the interest is there, yeah, I guess we'll only know if we test it. But just having a few things in the EOI just to reassure people, so we don't sort of set off a sort of, you know, set the horses off with worry about what it could be.
Point taken. Councillor Kelly, have you remembered?
Oh yeah, I was going to say, look, all this expenditure, someone pays at the end of the day. So the notion of saying, oh, we'll rent it to this organisation here, and they've got a great deal, they're going to do all the upgrades. You know, they factor that in. There's an end point you just got to get to. So we either give a ridiculously low rent for them to spend millions on it, or we spend millions and get lower rent. You know, so I get a bit worried when I hear that, you know, well, people are going to spend all that money. So someone's got to pay the ferryman at the end of the day. But I mean, I'll be seeing too in the study, CEO, that, you know, is the place habitable? You know, it's one thing to get the drive and get a study on that, but they're just getting someone to live in that there now. The compliancy, it's not going to take much to get a surveyor to do that.
No.
Everything, I'd be really, really saying, can we please get everything in the whole bundle? And it doesn't have to be the most thorough one, but it can be a bit of a desktop analysis to say, look, if you want to lend this out to someone just to live in, for a commercial kitchen, for even the art stuff, which is great and I fully support, but, you know, and the whole thing of saying to get a bus there, the minute the road involves buses, it's so hard, you know, pick up points for people in town or park at the bottom, all that stuff. You need that freedom of the road for any financially viable sort of thing that's going to work. And it's a tough one. I'm not saying it's easy, and it's a thorn in the side to us a bit, but let's look at this in its wholeness. The OA is not going to cost much to do, and I agree with the Lord Mayor to set some parameters on it and see what comes in. It's not a very expensive exercise, and I think it's very prudent for us to do that. Then we can move forward with the study on what we want to spend on, what do we need, and beyond that.
Thank you. I'm sure points are taken. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So all I know for sure is that the status quo can't continue. Something must happen with it, and I think it's terrible that it's gone on for this long with nothing happening. And I also understand that even back when it was bought, it's like they wanted the land and it happened to come with a house.
Correct.
And the intention was that the house would be sold. So my number one preference is absolutely for it to be subdivided and sold. And like even in the report it says under subdivision, well technically possible, approval is unlikely. But aren't we the approvers?
Well, you can approve it, but then you know that that's appealable. But I mean, so yes, but the advice is, and it's not just this council's advice, external planners that have looked at it in the past, in that last script basically said that you're not likely to be able to get it through the planning scheme for, so again, I wouldn't like to say in terms of the council decision as to whether it would be a lawful one, but the recommendation is that I don't think that it's approvable.
And how much what's the work involved in firming that up with actually...
In running the on a subdivision, well, it'd be just the same as any, I mean, Karen, probably to do a subdivision proposal, you'd be looking at 30 or 40 grand, probably a consultant, so.
At least, I
Yeah.
mean, you'd need a surveyor and you need to address all the codes that are called up, so I haven't turned my mind to
We can have a look at what it would cost, but again, it would be, I wouldn't like to spend all that money and not be able to get an outcome, that would be a problem.
Yeah, but so all of this is overlaid with the fact that we're losing 200 grand a year. It's costing us 200 grand a year anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like that. You have to have that perspective.
Yeah.
And so for me, there's four pathways. My preference is that I would love for it to be sold, and it would go to a great home, someone that would make it fantastic, and we can put all our protections on it that we legally can, and some wonderful person with a love for that would make the most out of it. That's my number one. And number two is, yes, I agree with your analysis that the accommodation option makes sense. I think it should be pitched at a higher level, like a couple of steps below Sapphire, so that it's a low volume impact on the site and impact on the property, but it's costing $4,000 a night, and you are getting the Sapphire type experience. Like Marty said, I would picture that someone would go into a really long lease, and I can see the split between some of the costs. I would feel comfortable with us spending $500,000 on the road, knowing that work has to be done by someone, and even if it was sold, then that work would be considered in the sale price, because otherwise you'll just pay less, you'll just get less, that'll be offset. And so, because my least preferred option is that we are much more involved, have our fingers in the accommodation itself, because, but this is a rare situation because we have to respond to the cards we've been dealt, which makes it hard. But I think sale number one, high-end premium accommodation number two, yes to an EOI, but it would be great to have in-person information session on the EOI for people, because there are some big players that
for sure.
might be interested in it.
I know that there are, yeah.
Yeah, because it's terrible that it's sitting there into disrepair and costing people so much. And if people can make the numbers work, and I think at that top end of the market they could, because Federal have plans, there's Sapphire, then they've got plans for Port Arthur, and then the equivalent in a real boutique Hobart experience would be fantastic. I mean, maybe you could put in a helicopter pad, that'd be cool. But you would.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Yes. So, but can we haven't really resolved the thoughts on more work on the option of
Well, it
selling.
might be just listening to people and yourself, is maybe do the expressions of interest, and then if there's nothing that actually grabs our fancy, then we actually have to look at, it is potentially wasting money, but what other options have you got if you can't find a viable use for it?
I think that makes sense. We do it the EOI, and then otherwise you bring it back to the council with pursuing a potential sale, and if not, the second last step is putting someone in there to do the heritage work.
Yeah.
Which is like just basically treading water.
That's right. That would
And
be
then
right.
the last result, the last unpreferred option is that it stays empty, which is terrible. But hopefully lesson learned that we don't do something like this again.
Thank you. Councillor Hub.
No, well, it's been a good outcome anyway with the vista that you get looking up onto the hills. So I think Porter's Hill is a really important component of Hobart, so I'm glad we did acquire the place. I don't know whether you can, I think the intent when it was purchased, I don't know if you're familiar with the original documents, was to keep it as a package? Yeah. But three quick points. I think I'd like to see a caretaker on the site as soon as possible, if we can do that, just to make sure that someone's keeping an overview of it. And the second is we kill a couple of other birds here. One would be the hot tub place, and the other one would be the zip line. Could we run them all from the top of Porter's Hill? Okay, ready to go home now?
The last speaker, Councillor Passot.
Thanks, I'll be brief, because I think we came into pumpkins in 4 minutes. I tend to agree with most of what Councillor Elliott said, that I think that offloading it is probably desirable, and it would be good to have proper legal advice on whether or not we can do that.
We already have tried that, so I'll recirculate it.
Was that advice based on the previous planning scheme or on this planning scheme?
That's not changed.
It's not changed?
No.
Okay. Outside of that, I mean, I think she's right, the boutique high-end accommodation is probably the only feasible use. I did note, I had a quick look at why does it skip my mind, the Rose something house in New South Wales, which is one of the most well-known architecturally preserved houses. Do we know that this is architecturally significant? Like, is this the most architecturally significant house in Tasmania?
Oh, it's right up there for sure. Yeah.
The Rose Seidler house. Harry Seidler was the architect. It's owned by Museums New South Wales, and just when I looked at the ownership, I was like, this is when I think Councillor Kelly said, not sure if this is the space we should be playing with or
it's out of our line.
It's hard, isn't it? When places like New South Wales government pick it up under museums for preservation.
Offer it to the council, to the government if you want.
Yeah.
I reckon I know what the answer will be.
Yeah, please offer it to Tina. That'd be great. But outside of that, it is a thorn in our side. So what do we do? As an elected member for something this complicated, I almost just defer to you and say, do whatever you think is best.
I think there's a good plan that's come out of tonight. So.
Which bit, the hot tub or the zip line?
Okay, the points are taken. Now, and that's the final one. Now someone move, or question without notice. Item number 8. Any questions? No questions. Most of the questions have been asked. Someone move that we move to the close. Moved by Councillor. So those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you.